My name is Othman Makari. I was born in Zaria. I spent most of my childhood between Katsina and Zaria. And my ancestry goes back really deep, multi-generational Zaria folk. My great-grandfather, Omar Wali, was writing poetry in Zaria. The earliest record of that I have is from 1897. Yeah, it's over 130 years ago. So yeah, I'm from these here parts. The name Native, however, came from freshman year in college, Columbia University in New York. I was very young. I went to college really young, and I drafted a play based on a Richard Wright novel. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with the Harlem Renaissance. I drafted a book, a play of that book. It's called The Native Son, Bigger Thomas. It's a very harrowing tale about race politics in the United States back during the McCarthyism era, which kind of reflected the very deep racist antebellum past of the United States. And so it was kind of a double entendre thing. I drafted a play called Native Son, which kind of tore around the Ivy Leagues. This is late 90s. I'm Asian myself. And because I always carried, the culture of these parts with me everywhere I went. There is an adage in the Hausa language. It says, "Kowa bari gida gida bari shi." For those of us who are not familiar with that, it means roughly whoever forsake his home has forsaken him. I find that to be a terrible fate for anyone, but especially somebody who wants to be an artist. So I took home with me everywhere I went. So yeah, my mother's folk are from Zaria. My father's folk are from Katsina, by way of the Sahara, Hamada, as we say in Hausa. We are Tuareg, Hausa, and Fulani. And yeah, so that's who I am as far as genealogically. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. It does. As far as your genealogy is concerned, I think that you've actually said most of it, and I'm really excited to hear that. Like, you know a lot about your genealogy as far back as 130 years ago. Most of us that are even...
Well, I know about it for as far as about 370 years ago.
See what I mean? I feel like that is quite impressive, because most of us that are even here don't know as much as, don't know that much about our own genealogy in northern Nigeria, I would say, and in Nigeria generally. And I think it's a great thing to be able to carry yourself with you.
I think there is there is a distinction to be made between don't know and do not want to know. I think as far as northern Nigeria is concerned, which is something we will touch upon like a little later. But the thing is, we have had documented writing in northern Nigeria for about at least there's a bifurcation, but concretely for at least about 400 years before the British even showed up here, we've had documented history, and it's not really that difficult to dig it up if you really into it. There is there is writing here. There it's a mix between oral tradition and a very literal tradition. Yesterday, the prof has touched up upon Ajami. There is like Ajami writing has been around these here parts for at least half a millennia. Yeah.
That's interesting. Um, I'm an artist. I'm a dancer and performer, and yeah, and I've traveled a lot to perform, but not as much as you, definitely.
Pretty hard
But
to travel as much as me, man. I'm a Tuareg. We are
yeah,
nomadic.
yeah, and I think that like one of the things that I try to do when I travel is to like um, look at the narrative from the north, and the way that we're perceived. And I think it's been a conversation that has been on, like from yesterday till today. And it's one of the things that I would also like to bring back in some sense, in terms of like, I want to know where your history and northern Nigeria in particular is in the work that you do. I like the fact that your work is idea based. So it's not like, oh, this is the only thing I do, but like, just pure genius work. Like I have an idea and this is how I choose to express it. But like, I want to know like more context. How much of northern Nigeria's context, whether it's history or our current social life, that is in your project, and how that influences the narrative about northern Nigeria globally.
Well, that's very granular. So it's all of it. In a nutshell, it's all of it. But my idea of an artist is kind of
Gulmarun bana ilimi, waƙarrun bana ilimi, aikin bana ilimi.
practical, they are way too pragmatic. And so by the time I left Nigeria, my construction as an artist has already been terminated. It was done. We back live. I don't think we should upload that mediocrity. We shouldn't even have the light cut from the first place. But so yeah, I think an artist. Is supposed to have. It's supposed to, that's just my personal definition of it. It's supposed to preserve the 7-year-old in them and protect them at all costs until they die, because art requires an extreme level of abstraction and a tremendous amount of freedom. And unless you can do that, you're in a lot of trouble. So yeah, by the time I left Nigeria, which is not much after 7 years old, my fortune as an artist has already been terminated. It was a done deal. But everything I do, I owe to this place. My father's a poet. He's a brilliant poet. We evoke the word diwan, a very dear word to me. His own just came out. I'm pretty jealous of that. So my father published his collected work in the Hausa language before me. It's about 497 pages. I don't know why 97. But it's a lot of caustic stanzas, verse after verse of scathing Hausa poetry, satire. I mean, all the chapters, the different categories of poetic expression. My grandfather from my mother's side was a poet. My great-grandfather from my father's side was a poet. My great-grandfather from my mother's side was a poet. I owe that to them. I owe everything to this place. Now, your question bifurcated a little bit, so I'm gonna address. We are all over the place. It's kind of pandemonium. The way we start, and I like it though. I like it. It's kind of calm. As far as northern Nigeria and what we know of northern Nigeria, elsewhere outside the confines of the Niger-Benue confluence, is you are right. It's alarmingly meager, to say the very least. We don't know nothing about northern Nigeria past Lokoja, or I would say Ilorin. So much so, I was going to save this for later, but let's get right into it. So much so that a northern Nigerian celebrated, an underground northern Nigerian writer, an author, could write a book in 1934 as a part of, what's his name, the NNPC guy, Rupert. NNPC, not the Petro, as way after. Talking to Northern Nigerian Publishing Corporation Company, like, those of us who are familiar with it, it was all the publishing was happening in Zaria. That's another thing. I grew up in Zaria in an academic setting. My uncle was a professor at ABU Zaria, so was my father. I grew up in the confines of those, within those libraries, and there's an intellectual tradition in that city. You know, there is a very ancient intellectual, is brewing with intellectual tradition in Zaria. The reason why artists today in Nigeria can enjoy a reputation within the both core and peripheral artistic movements is because of the Zaria School. You know, that was the first artistic movement in Nigeria, and that's because ABU Zaria made a very fateful decision. I think it was in '52. They decided to award bachelor's degree in arts. Before that, you can only get a diploma anywhere within West Africa, but they decided to award a bachelor's degree in arts, and a lot of people flocked to Zaria. So there is a publishing tradition. There is a very literal tradition in Zaria, and I grew up running amongst those oily machines in NMPC and Gaskiya Haja Barmani, Haja Rahmat yesterday evoked that, like you know, I felt that was visceral for me. Those oily machines when you have to move the printing stones, and Zaria was printing a lot of books. A lot of books were being written in Kano, and Zaria was printing them. So I was in a place where the first actual copies of newspaper, Amana, Gaskiya Tapu, all of those, like, they would come out, and we literally got them, and I'm talking in an actual literal sense. We got them hot off the printing stone in Zaria. So I grew up running around those machines. I went back, they are defunct now, unfortunately. So not only that we read books in that town, we made them. If you wanted to publish, if you wanted to print something in northern Nigeria, and by extension even the North Central, only lazy people call it the Middle Belt, the North Central, you came to Zaria to print. So we grew up reading Hausa books. That's my first literary experience. I remember precisely. I mean, check this out, fam. I grew up between Katsina and Zaria, right? I went to Rafindati Primary School. That's a flex. That's a flex. Rafindati Primary School has graduated 3 presidents of Nigeria, you know. One of them, unfortunately, was never served in office, Shehu Musara Adua, but he was elected. So yeah, we come from a literal tradition. So with that said, an author from northern Nigeria can write a book and have a very modestly known among those who read in Hausa. Somebody very dear to me, very close to my family, John Tafida Usasa, wrote a book called Jikimagai. This is how granular is the bifurcation between northern Nigeria and elsewhere. There is a celebrated author from eastern Nigeria, southeastern Nigeria, called Cyprian Ekwensi. I'm pretty sure within this whole, a lot of people are more familiar with Cyprian Ekwensi than they are with John Tafida Usasa. John Tafida Usasa wrote a book in 1937 called Jikimagai as a part of a literary competition. I think that's when Marigai Tafawa Balewa wrote Sheikh Umar, and I think Abubakar Imam as well was a part of it. He wrote Ruwan Bagaja, or was it Maganajari first? I think Ruwan Bagaja was first. Thank you very much, sir. And Cyprian Ekwensi took word for word. The plagiarism so steep, it's so vertiginous that he didn't even bother changing the name of the characters of John Tafida Usasa's book. He took it whole, translated it into English, African Nights and other stories, and he got awards for it. And it took Nigeria about 42 years to realize that that book was stolen from a Hausa author. So that's how much we know about Northern Nigerian literature.
Yeah.
Another example, the Kano Chronicles.
Yeah.
The Kano Chronicles, I think, started in the 15th century, 1400s, and it ran all the way down to the jihad of Uthman Fodio, and when the English came and sacked the palace of Kano, and ransacked those old libraries, they labeled and cataloged about 70% of those books they found as Quran. So they took the most compiled, the most succinct history of West Africa in the written form, and they labeled it as another Quran. And it took 79 years until a German by the name of Heinrich Kleist learned Hausa and Ajami and realized that that is not a Quran, but a history of northern Nigeria and West Africa by extension. So that knowledge you're talking about is right there. Ibn Furtu, the wars of Kanem, the kings of Kanem, the wars of Borno, Tahafut, like it goes. The list is vast.
Yeah.
It goes for days, you know.
Yeah.
So the information is there if we want it. We just do not want to actually bother with it. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't read books anymore. We read memes, you know.
Yeah.
Another very, very brilliant Hausa book, Batura Gagare Karshang Aleo Kasa.
Yeah.
I'm very curious. This is not a test of people's literature depth or I'm not trying to see who is an erudite. I'm really actually curious to know how widespread is Batura Gagare's book. Who has read Karshang Aleo Kasa? By show of hands, please. Subhanallah. That's two people. That's
Yeah.
three.
Yeah, you know what I find?
Please keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. It's really important for me.
Yeah. One, two,
Okay.
3, 4.
3, 4.
5.
Wow. I salute you.
There's 5.
5 people. 5 people. 2 men, 3 women. 6 now. So how many? That's about 6 seats each. How many rows deep? I'm not gonna do the math, but
Say we have.
yeah,
over
I think we have about
300.
at least. No, we don't have 300. That's 6
150,
times.
200.
How many? Whatever. The point is, that's less than 1% of this whole that has read a tour de force, a chef d'oeuvre of Hausa literature. It's a magnificent book. We are sitting with a doyen, a pillar of Hausa literature. We are really blessed by her ladyship. She wrote for. I read her books when it was illegal for me to read her books. So really, actually, let me commend the young ladies and gentlemen that are arduously putting this together. Please, a round of applause for yourselves, the organizers of this show. I did not know. That's how much you appreciate yourselves. All right, man. I'll do it. it's really it's I didn't know that this existed. I remember back when we had the trade fair and the book fair in Kaduna. That was something. That was about 35 years ago. The Peugeot company was still running, the whole nine, you know. And I thought that was all dead until I found a DM in my spam about a week ago from a gentleman, Sada Malumfashi. The name Sada is, yeah.
Clap if you want to clap.
Yeah, please go ahead. I found a DM in my Instagram, just accidentally invited me to this brilliant gathering, and I was a week ago. It's been sitting there for about a month and a half, and I promptly responded and committed to it. I was supposed to be on a flight back to Paris. What is today, the 20th? Yeah, today actually. Tonight I was supposed to be on my way back to Europe, so I pushed my flight, and I'm happy to be here, and I hope this really sparks an interest in Hausa readership. That's it.
Yeah, put your hands together for Native, please. You've said a lot of things, but like at the very core of everything that you've said, like not word for word, but definitely, we need to honor ourselves from the North. And someone was saying earlier today that like if you think that the North is just Hausa, you must be very shallow-minded. I mean, not in this word, but like there are a whole bunch of us that are working as, young artists. Young artists are not even visible enough, you know. I was telling someone earlier today that like there are a bunch of artists from northern Nigeria that right now are doing big things globally. Not from northern Nigeria, sorry, from Kaduna State, between Kawo and Berna, that are doing some of the biggest things on a global level. I am one of them. He's one of them. Sada is one of them. Sada has not been here for over how many years? He's been in the United States. There's another one of our friends that is in the United States. There's another one that is in the UK. There's another one that is somewhere in South Africa. There's another one that is touring Europe. We toured Europe. He's been touring the world. And he's been talking about literature and about how we're not reading books of writers. But I'm a performance artist, right? But I don't just want to talk about literature because I don't know so much about literature as well. But like,
yeah, I think it's
yeah, but like,
fair.
art in general, I feel like we need to start looking for artists from northern Nigeria and amplifying our works, you know. And from what he's saying is we need to go back, and I think that's one of the things that makes sense to me. Unfortunately, we don't have so much time to dig deeply into all of these details.
Sorry, I'm beholden to modify some of that. I'm not saying we need to go back. I'm saying we need to move forward. But I'm saying we shouldn't neglect the past, but we should move forward.
Right, if you don't go back, how do you even know where you're coming from to know where you're going? Yeah, but I think it's the same thing. Moving forward is actually going back. Like, my work is history-based. For example, like, I grew up in Hibaf, right? And thank you.
Has been cut by about 25 minutes. I should have been informed before. So no, I wouldn't like to give it to the audience. I would like to say something to the audience.
Fair enough. The thing is that we're having a lot of activities, but yes,
yeah,
sure,
that modification should have been informed before we started talking, so
Right.
that I would have modified my time and cut what I was gonna say
Right.
and used it.
Fair
That
enough,
information
fair
just
enough.
came on while we were here
Fair
talking.
enough.
So I'm not gonna change it.
Let's
I'm
go
going
with
to
it.
sit
Let's
here,
go then.
and I'm going to finish that thought.
Let's go.
Thank you very much, sir.
Let's go.
So yeah, I'm going to try to be very brief and abridge everything we're saying. Yeah, we should respect time. It's all we have. Time is all we ever have. About theater and performance, that book I mentioned, Shehu Umar, was it was adapted into a film. It's the first multi-million. It spent about $2.5 million. It's the first multi-million dollar production in northern Nigeria, in Nigeria in general. This is 1970s, right after Festat. The reel for that film has sat in a rice sack in Jos somewhere for about 50 years until somebody from Germany extracted it, and they have cleaned it up, they restored it, and they are going to release it this year. Shehu Omar, the filming for that was amazing. It's brilliant, just like, yeah, like exposures of brilliance. So performance, and I do not think that literature is completely divorced from the performative at all. I think the colonial powers created that hierarchy, that an oral tradition is less valuable than a literal tradition. But the European theater, we are sitting in a European setting, for example, right now, right? Whereas you have audience, you have a range of seats, and you have people center stage. An African conference is circular, right? You all sit in a courtyard. It's a circular thing. You don't have a frontal stage. In African masquerade and theater performance, participation is currency. All you have to do is show up. You don't go and buy a ticket. Participation is currency. But movement, rhythm, performance, and theater records body language. It records actual concrete history. For example, if you take the Durbar, let's take Hawan Doshe, for example, in Kano, right? As oral tradition has it, Hawan Doshe was originated because there is a gentleman named Doshe who was a squire, so to speak, of the Emir of Kano. And there is this one Durbar where he loved to ride. He was an equestrian. He loved horses, and he was sent away, and due to external circumstances, he wasn't able to come back and participate in the Durbar that year in Hawan Salah. So the Emir told everyone to get in their regalia again, and let's do it one more. Let's have a special parade. Let's have a special Durbar for Doshe. And that history is now recorded and performative. That's a performative document. That's history. That's recorded history. If you look at the gates that go into the cities, I grew up around Gopher Kwaya because the Arabic Teachers College was right next to it. My father taught there for a long time. I spent my childhood running around those classrooms as well. Those gates, the architecture of the city contains historical record. You know, if you want to know, and this is the last thing I would say, unfortunately we ran out of time. I thought we were actually going to delve deeper into it. The most important thing I would say tonight is please read Karshan Aleo Kasa if you haven't. But if you want to understand the historical accuracy of the colonial enterprise, look at the books, the ledgers. Not the history books, but the record keeping, the money. Follow the money. it doesn't lie. It's math. You know, 27 slaves were kept in this room on December 20th 1739. That record contains nothing but a simple truth of mathematical truth. And so do cities. The Yoruba, for example, counted distance, not visually like a clock, but sonically with a talking drum. You know, a white person, when they leave from Marseille, headed to Paris, they need a borne, right? Une borne, trois bornes, and you need to physically see the sign that says you have traveled 25 kilometers to know that you have traveled 25 kilometers. The Yorubas use the talking drum, right, Kalungu, and they inform the next village, so you know how far the person is, but sonically, you know, a baritone doesn't reach that far. A soprano is high pitch; it goes all the way up. So time is sonic. The Tuaregs counted time with incense. They burn incense. So time is a different sensory. It's smell. It's olfactic. So there is no hierarchy. It's just a different way of recording facts and history. So I don't think there is a difference between the body, the performative, something that was recorded in the body. You take the prayer, the Islamic prayer, for example. It's a record of a calisthenics that you perform, like, you know, you stretch 5 times a day. The reason why the Muslims were, like, about 700 Muslims took all of Europe real quick in the 7th century is because of physical performance. Because when there is a black pox or there is a black plague within the Visigoth camp, if there is a pandemic, everyone dies. The Muslims do not, because they wash their hands 25 times a day. You know, so the diseases didn't spread in the Islamic camps. You know, you take Salatul Khawf, for example. I don't know if people are familiar with it. Salatul Khawf is a choreography of a prayer that you perform during war. So during warfare, you are not exempt. During battle, in the heat of battle, you are not exempted from praying. And there is a choreography where you tap yourself and you move during battle. That's a historical, it's called Salatul Khawf. As a mover, you should look into it. It's a really brilliant way to record history and to record body movement and body language. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, just keep clapping. Just keep clapping. We still have some time with them. We still have, yeah, for the audience. Yeah.
Oh, pardon. I'll leave the rest of the time to you.
Thank you. One thing I want to say before I come to the audience is that, first of all, put your hands together for Open Arts. Because you know what they try to do? What they try to do is do what most of us would do in a week, in like 2 days, right? And it's all dependent on how much funding is available. Because, like, I feel like we have not really scratched, you know, the surface of the conversations that we're having. We had the same experience with the panel earlier on security. How many of you want?
A native. I said native of this world. I said, well, probably that is just it. Native of the world. Not native of Zaria, not native of Kaduna or Nigeria or something. I was perplexed. I love it. As I like to see somebody who owns himself, who talks to himself, who doesn't feel inferior to anybody. And then somebody who's what? The brilliance of an academic. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Why I'm even probably standing here, because half of what you said probably is in our area in the university. I am a literary historian. I studied almost all the books that you are talking about in the last 35 years. The only probably comment I would like to make is just probably an addition. It's a very controversial topic concerning Jiki Magai and African Nights Entertainment. In the last 5 or 7 years, a lot of arguments have taken place concerning, is it plagiarism per se? Yes, I read.
I would love to hear your opinion on it.
I'm trying to offer one. Yes, Cyprian Ekwesi himself said he has never seen Jikima again in his life before he died. But there is one thing that happened probably that made him wrote just like exactly Jikima Gai. He said he lived most of his life in Jos.
In Jos.
Yes, and
He spoke Hausa pretty
he
fluent.
spoke Hausa fluently.
Yeah.
And there was a woman who normally tell them stories. And those stories, part of it is that particular book of Jikima Gai. She read it herself, and it has more or less become what? In her own memory. So she was telling them that story, and he was now listening to it. Just like Tatsunia, when you are now telling people, the young ones, Tatsunia, by the time they grow up, they are going to repeat it. They are going to memorize it and then repeat it repeatedly through the family. I can still recall 50 years ago, sometimes even after 55 years ago, the Tatsunui given to me by one Fatima, a newly-wed young girl in our own compound. There is one she did, which up to today, I will continue to repeat it. Even up to today, my grandchild, he's aware of that because there's a song there.
It's like Khalila or Demna and the fables of Fountain.
So there are those kind of intermingling that usually happen. He didn't, just like you said, word for word, but when you read it, there is a lot of comparison that you can make out of the two. But I am sure from what he said, I have that belief that it has to do with what? Reinterpretation, replication. Well, I don't want to say that is the actual truth. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very willing to accept that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I think it's very probable. That's very aggressive, brother. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. My name is Abla Rajo. I'm a student and also a teacher of Francophone African literature in French. And if you look at Francophone African literature, it is categorized into pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial generation. So the post-colonial literature or generation, the writers concentrated, writers like Mariam Abba and many others, concentrated on marital issues and social vices that Nigeria and other African countries were suffering then. So now we're in 21st century. We have young writers now that are striving every day to write. And I believe in the future, we hope to have qualitative writings like Jikima Gai and many others that you've given example of. So what advice do you have for this generation to produce qualitative literary books that in the future will be making reference to, just the way we are making reference to these ones now? Thank you very much.
Thanks. That's an onus of a Sisyphean impact. Première chose, entre toi et moi, je ne pense pas que ça existe, le post-colonial. C'est un terme un peu maudit. But I do not have any insights on writing besides just write. وهل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. You know, just write. Write the truth. There is just write the truth. What is a work if it isn't a ticket to slip into vivid euphoria? Don't expect. I think the one thing I can say is do not expect. If you are trying to make money from writing, stop writing.
Thank you. Thank you. Did we have any hand up? Okay. Just last one. Make it quick. 20 seconds. Sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, native Magari.
Walaikum salam.
I really cherish the way you speak. Your English is really native-like, and it is really.
You should hear my Hausa.
Yeah. It's just a mesmerizing English.
10 seconds gone.
Yeah. I learned that you are obsessed with the history of Nigeria.
I'm not. You learn wrong.
Yeah. So you are okay. Why your self-concept influenced by or shaped by native speakers? I can see their influence in the way you dress and in the way you talk. Why are you losing your own identity?
Hey, voila.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That, unfortunately, that question is not a 20-second thing. That's a summer course at a state university. But my own identity asserts that you know who I am. Identity is not a static thing to me. It's a dynamic. In the immortal words of Amartya Sen, right? Professor Amartya Sen said, the economist, Nobel Prize for Economy, he said, I will paraphrase him. If you are a Nigerian from, say, Kura local government, is it in Kano still? In Kano, from Kura local government, and you follow the right of the Izala, and you happen to be a vegetarian, and you happen to be a football player. Now, when you are going to dinner, your identity as an Izala means zero. Your identity as a vegetarian becomes important. When you are going to vote locally, your identity as an indigent of Kura local government is more important than your identity as a Nigerian. When you are going to travel internationally, you need a Nigerian passport. Your identity as a Nigerian is more important than your identity as a vegetarian. Now that is how identity works. However, we could have this conversation outside. If you ask him why do I have a lot of hair, it's because I spent about 24 years living in the East Coast of the United States, and it's cold as fuck there. So you need the hair. If you ask him why it is, why it's twisted, I'll tell you it's sunnah. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam braided his hair. If you ask him why I'm wearing Celine shoes, it's because I can afford them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Put your hands together for native, everybody. I think we need to take some pictures. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome to the 5th edition of the Hausa International Book and Arts Festival. We would like to sincerely thank the Open Society Foundations for their support in making this year's festival possible. Coming up, we have a panel discussion on documentation and archiving. where Fuad Lawal and Nabila Osman will share insight on the processes and challenges of preserving cultural records. The conversation will touch on cultural preservation, the politics of record keeping, and the urgency of on documentation and archiving. Where Fuad Lawal and Nabila Osman will share insight on the processes and challenges of preserving cultural records. The conversation will touch on cultural preservation, the politics of record keeping, and the urgency of on documentation and archiving. Where Fuad Lawal and Nabila Osman will share insight on the processes and challenges of preserving cultural records. The Welcome to the 5th edition of the Hausa International Book and Arts Festival. We would like to sincerely thank the Open Society Foundations for their support in making this year's festival possible. Coming up, we have a panel discussion on documentation and archiving, where Fuad Lawal and Nabila Uthman will share insight on the processes. The conversation will touch on cultural preservation, the politics of record keeping, and the urgency of safeguarding narratives within both traditional and contemporary contexts before they are lost. Please welcome Fuad and Nabila to the stage.
Turn it on.
Ooh.
All right, fantastic. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nabila Usman, and of course, my guest, Fuad Lawal. For those of you who have not read, you can sit down actually.
We can do this standing too.
Okay, he wants to stand. All right, so for those of you who have not read the bios, I don't know how many of you have been on Twitter and you've seen Start Archiving. A few of you have seen that. That's his brainchild. Yeah, he's the guy behind it. I mean, Fuad is behind a lot of other things, but for today's purposes, I think Start Archiving is the one we'll lead with. Right. Over the next 40 minutes, we'll have a great conversation. We'll open up for questions, and let's get into it.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I was told to introduce myself. I'm a journalist. I work on radio in Lagos, but Kaduna is home. Born and raised. Yes. All right. Okay. There's a thing they say about memory.
Yeah.
In African societies, a lot of what we do in preserving memory is oral tradition, right? But they also say about memory that the science tells us that the last time you remembered something is actually the last time you remembered it. So you're not really remembering what happened in 2020. You're remembering what happened when you remembered it in 2022, right? And so your memory continues to tweak and tweak and tweak. And suddenly something that was red when you're telling the story becomes orange, right? Yeah. So let's start off just there.
Yeah.
Doing archiving in a way that is counter to what our historic traditions have been.
Yeah.
1 second. Can I have the room, please? Hi. Hi. All right. Can I have the room, please?
We could just ask some.
I promise you guys that it is. Okay. Hello. Forgive me. I was a teacher before I left Kaduna. Yes, so I have experience with my students talking in the back. So please, if I could actually have your attention, very important conversations, right? Because we are talking about what it means to document history. And as for right now, once this panel is over, we will be talking about what it means to document, for instance, Hibaf 2025, right? We think about history as thinking 40 years ago, 100 years ago, but history is being made now. So there are lessons to be learned if you would give Fuad the chance to talk to you. All right, thank you. So,
I feel like I should carry you around everywhere. Just like,
go on.
okay. It's interesting because I have a friend. She worked at archiving for a few months also. like our ongoing debate is she's obsessed with like how like time is preserved in oral tradition, and I'm just focused on like standards, how it is preserved, like at least for where archiving started from, which is like print. But the very interesting thing about it is that my relationship between oral traditions and written traditions is that, let's use very, very specific scenarios. When a journalist writes a story, right? Newspapers are still like where our largest collection is. The journalist writes a story, builds a narrative, has hours of conversations, and condenses it into 300 words, right? It paints a picture of a time, but one of the things that I am learning is that oral traditions go into like the deep nuances of the time. So archiving just started its own oral history program, which is just collecting like from people's memories and stuff. And I remember that one of the triggers for me was that I'd read a lot of materials about Buhari and control pricing in the 80s and all of that. But like it didn't really like land for me. My dad was a trader in Lagos Island, and he was telling me about how one day what used to actually happen was they'd go to a warehouse to buy at wholesale price, and the soldiers would require them in the market to sell at wholesale price. And I've read essays about it. I've heard about it in documentaries. But like, he now went on to explain that one day, he sold at a very small markup, and the soldiers caught him, and they beat him, and they were dragging him to Dodan, and the marketman came out to cry and beg. And just that perspective, like, gave more color than anything I'd ever imagined, like, or even thought I knew about control pricing. And so when I think about oral traditions, I think the outsized pro of oral traditions is how much color that they contain, how much perspective they offer. When you really think about it, your personal history is your family's history, is your country's history, right? The obvious con of it is how it gets eroded over time, right? So for example, I was reading a book that was explaining even like Bini brass work. And one of the things I learned is that in the first century, that was whenever I talk about like Benin bronze, the really best stuff was made in the first century when they were getting produced. Because over time, it just got, like the quality just like degraded over time. And it's not because like, it's not like people were not trying their best. It just meant that like the standards that were set at the beginning, there were no ways to like preserve them and document them. It's also interestingly connected to even how archiving started. One of the real frustrations for me at the beginning that led to archiving was that I feel like everyone has seen this on the internet, where every year you're going to see a university student somewhere is going to design a car that runs on like kerosene, and everybody's going to be like, wow, the government needs to sponsor. And then every year, someone else in another school makes an uglier car. And I was like, these guys are trying their best, but every time they are starting afresh all over again. And when you think of the fact that progress is a consequence of like building on top of like past work, abrogated stuff and everything, all civilization works like that. A lot of what we call like even the Islamic Renaissance, like and with the sciences and everything, was consuming like Chinese material, Hellenic literature, and abrogating it, translating it, updating it. A lot of us became the Renaissance, like was also taking those materials, abrogating, updating, and everything. So I think oral traditions will matter for a long time. My own personal concern is just largely standards, like how ideas are preserved consistently over time. Yeah.
So how do you define a standard for oral tradition if it changes with every generation?
I don't think it can be defined. And I think, okay, so this is also like a call for everyone, is that like a lot of the time when we engage with like religious history, let me use like Islamic history and everything, I think that because we are entering it mostly out of religious obligation to learn history, to learn Islamic history, like we rob ourselves of the opportunity to enjoy and consume even like the sociological perspectives of it. So of course everybody, if you've gone to any madrasa, you probably heard about the Reader Wars, when lots of the Hafis were dying, right? They were the people, like, they were the people who had memorized the Quran, right? And there was a fear that a lot of it would be lost. And to kind of make sure like this material was not lost, like they had to create a standard, right? And the standard they chose was like Qurayshi Arabic. And that's why you can say to some degree that like we have the Quran today. I think that oral traditions have had different ways to be resilient in different places. Very recently, my birthday was a few weeks ago, and my auntie actually, my dad actually asked one of his friends to make a voice note of my Oriki. So I'm Yoruba, and Yoruba people have Oriki and everything. And I actually got really curious about what it meant that day, because there were some new ones I did not know before, and it included a lot of names of my ancestors that I did not know. And I actually started to dig up academic papers, and what happened was about 10 lines of my Oriki condensed 800 years of like my ancestry, right? But like even my dad did not know that it did that, because it did not like, yes, it gave me material to, or it, as most oral history tends to do, it had a lot of like context density, but there was not enough to make sense of it. It felt like a riddle that I was gonna like find the answer to. So I think that for the most part, like oral tradition are a good entry point. They are a critical part of like the body of knowledge, but they cannot be the last bus stop.
Okay, so let's talk about written history.
Yeah.
The moment you write something, you give it some more resilience,
Yes.
right? It's more likely to be passed down.
Yeah.
So 15 years later, the paper is there, you take a look at it. In shaping this conversation, Sada had made a reference to the Hausa paper from the 1930s, the late 30s into the 40s, which is Gaskiya Tafi Kwabo. Truth is more precious than the naira. Essentially, the truth is more precious than currency, right? Yeah. And I couldn't help but we situated it in Nigeria's own history, which has largely been shaped by two powers. One, the colonial power, and two, Southern media. We know that the heart of Nigerian media is down south.
Yeah.
And let's not even say down south, mostly Lagos.
Yep.
And whatever you see out of Lagos that talks about what's happening in Kaduna, what's happening in Kebbi, in Bauchi, is what you will take as gospel truth. Meanwhile, you will go to Kaduna, Kebbi, and Bauchi, and you will see that life is different.
Yeah.
So we're talking insecurity now. 15 people can be kidnapped in a village in Plateau. You go to that same village, and somehow there's a version of life that is still going on. But if you look at the papers, it's not possible to see that. So that raises the question of who should document history, and when we find out the who, what are the questions we should ask to know that this is a person documenting from a place of integrity?
I think that, and again, I'll try to answer a lot of these questions within the context of archiving, because that is where the questions are even starting for even me. One of the things that was clear to us when we started, we prioritized like one newspaper per day. One of the things that became very, very clear early was that one newspaper will never be enough perspective. But like one newspaper is absolutely better than nothing from that day. I think everybody needs to commit to some degree to like just archiving. In fact, it's a big part of what is driving our approach to the oral history project. We want people to sit with their parents and just turn on the recorder and just ask them questions. There's this thing about us growing up with our family members that we never really consider them in their fullness. We just know them as, oh, this dude came home every day and left in the morning every day. I was interviewing my dad for a story in 2019, and my dad was like, oh, he actually wrote to an aeronautics school in the US after his secondary school, and they wrote back to him asking him to apply. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you wanted to be an astronaut, Mr. Lawal? What does that even mean? I think we need as many perspectives of it as possible because, like, our own context is grossly underdocumented, grossly understudied. But there's also the horrible aspect where it's like people who have done a lot of these studies in the past, it just feels like we have a severance from it. So, for example, I found a copy of Nigerian Magazine from 1954, and there was a full editorial on Obudukatu Ranch. I thought it was Donald Duke. I thought it was like a place that no one knew, and he went and he dug it up and named it Obudukatu Ranch. It is a colonial legacy, right? And the truth is that like no single person should be the custodian of all that context and all that knowledge and all that power, quite literally. And so like I feel like everyone should find like a tiny paper from a small town and collect it. Should find like oral histories and sit down with people and just record it. Because one of the interesting things and the most exciting things about the future for me is that there's always the question of how much of that knowledge can we even consume? But now, like we have LLMs, like they're literally designed for large languages, right? And large amounts of information. And the question you start to ask yourself is that if you could find a lot of context about, let's even start with Nigeria, for example, like what are the patterns that will emerge just from having this massive body of knowledge and context that we can begin to make sense of?
So for the sake of those of us in the room who are not tech inclined,
okay, yes.
LLMs.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Are large language models.
Yes. LLMs are large language models. Is there anybody here who has ever used ChatGPT? ChatGPT.
They don't want to put up their hands, but there's a lot of people who have used it.
Your job is safe. Don't worry. If you have used ChatGPT or any LLMs, DeepSeek, Gemini, Claude. Yeah, everybody. Okay. So, ChatGPT is an LLM. For example, ChatGPT. One random fun fact is that if you ask ChatGPT what happened on March 5 in 1965 in New York, it can tell you with almost within the accuracy of that week. It can't tell you for Kaduna because no Kaduna context was digitized, and that model is not trained on any Kaduna context. That's why everyone needs to do it. So it's like our problem is no longer how do we pass through all this information. It's now where is even the information to pass through. It doesn't exist. Anyway.
So do you interrogate the intention for archiving, right? Because when the colonial masters were writing whatever our histories were, it was deliberate, right? So we have villages and ethnic groups as opposed to maybe rural towns or country homes, for instance, and it's deliberate. The words help you situate people at the bottom of the rank. Even in Nigerian media, and I will go along a religious fault line, for instance, in places in Plateau, right? When it's Fulani Muslim communities that are attacked, what you hear is villages have been attacked, they've been killed. But if it is the other ethnic groups that are predominantly Christians, it is specific and deliberate. And you say XYZ number of Christians have been killed. And in that you will probably say, including a pastor, a 2-year-old child, it's eliciting a kind of emotion in the reader, So the intention behind archiving something, for those of us who are trying to fill in the gap, should it be a deliberate countering of the narrative, or should it be archiving for the sake of archiving?
I think it is fine for everyone to have intent, because like even the journalists that were writing the newspaper, the stories in the newspapers were digitizing, there was clearly intent. There was a way that it's a very, very random thing, or it feels random. But like when you look at old footage of the at the end of the Nigerian Civil War, like interviews from Lagos, archival footage, you see them say a lot that, oh, like it's not Igbo people that are a problem. Oh, it's that Ojuku person. And then you find newspapers from 69, which is like the year before the end of the war, 69, 68, and there were massive editorials about how the problem is Ojuku, like almost as if there were editorials to separate Igbo people from Ojuku as the problem, right? And it went on to shape how people even perceived the problem. I think that, like personally, I think that people should have integrity and just be honest, which is that if a thing happened this way, it is perhaps useful that you capture it as it happened this way, right? But I also understand that for some people, like information is as relevant as their own, almost like their own participation in it. An example will be, for example, we're talking outside about There Was a Country, Chinua Achebe's book. Like, everybody says it is biased, but that's the point, right? And that account also matters, right? When you read even hadith, right? Like who you choose to call like a pagan, and like all of those things are biases. They are like, and it's like it is what it is. So I think the first and most important thing is that it must be collected, because it's when it is collected that it can be studied, can be improved upon, can be abrogated and everything. But like any version, I know it sounds very, very stressful. Any version that is grounded in some fact is better than a vacuum to me. That's particularly how I see it. Because like we're digitizing newspapers and you're seeing things people are saying. Like, and like, why? How did this get printed? But like it matters to know how people saw those things. I just finished watching a documentary of 100 Years of the New Yorker, and like in the 40s and 50s, like very racist jokes from the New Yorker. That is like the bastion of like woke literature. But like it matters that it is collected, that they did say
became a thing, and then Nigeria became a corporate entity. Yeah. His narrative of Nigeria could have been fundamentally different from the narrative that another fellow British man had, right? And so because he had access to power, his narrative is what we know today as the foundation for our country. If you ask the people who lived by the River Niger before Mungo Park came along what they called the river, on one side of the river would have been a different name, while on the other side of the river would have been a different name, but it's still the same river, right? In that case, you have a collective approach towards archiving what that river means to that community. So I'm curious about archiving as a singular endeavor versus archiving as a communal endeavor.
I think it is communal. Like, and a very, very simple one is even soups. It's like there are some like soups that just have different names across Nigeria.
Ayoyo and ewedu. I ate ayoyo all my life, and then I told my mother, "Mommy, I've never eaten ewedu." Yeah. And my mother is from Kogi. She speaks Yoruba. Yeah. And then, she brought ewedu and it was ayoyo, and I was wondering what was wrong.
Yeah. It's like akpon, ogbono.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of those. I think that, for me, like, it's so important to capture all perspectives because, like, even at the risk of sounding like an academic, I'm not. Even the etymology of those perspectives, like, actually tell you, like, how they ended up there, right? Like, what a people choose to call a thing largely defines even what that thing meant to them, right? When you think about the concept of, like, dangerous places in Nigeria, for example, like the highest peak in Nigeria, I think the local name, Chapalwadi, the local name means like Mountain of Death or something. If you grew up watching like Igbo films, you know that like the very, very dense forests were evil forests, right? It was like it actually told you more about their fear than anything like having to come and grab you from the sky in the forest and so on and so forth. So I think that like we need more names for things, and the only way we can get more names for things is if people even say them and collect them and we begin to like compare them. like a random fun exercise you should probably try is just, and please, I call it an exercise, not like a search for truth. Is you should actually just feed like some very, very, I guess, local like concepts that feel like it's like exist only in your village. Like just like throw it into one of your favorite LLMs and ask it if it can find examples of it that exist everywhere in the world. And like you'll be surprised, right? Whether it's even local medicines or whether it's all kinds of stuff. Because it was on one of those like random adventures that I discovered that like there's a whole ass family tree in my family, and he pulled it from a JSTOR paper. Like my ancestors are from like Ijebu, right? And he pulled it from there's a whole ass family tree in Abeokuta, and I actually went to read the full paper and saw that this is actually just some manipulation from like 300 years ago and so on and so forth. And it's like the names. The reason he found both was that the names were the same, but like when the Abeokuta people now Egba people are speaking, the names that Ijebu people might call a food is different from what they are calling the food, and it just tells you so much. But again, it still goes back to like my ultimate hot take, which is that we are grossly underdocumented, we are grossly understudied, and we have so little sense making about our work and our place in the world. To be honest.
So it's important for us to, I just realized that it's important for me to actually differentiate documentation versus archiving, right? And you might think it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing. You first start with documentation. You must document before you can archive, right? And this allows me to come to, I know someone who's doing work in Ghana at the moment. It's something similar to a series that you've done at archiving. And what she's doing is she's looking at the women who were around during their independence movement, but not the famous women, right? Not their own version of Fumilayo Ransom Kuti. She's looking at the women who were, just their regular market women on the side when Kwame Nkrumah came, and these women were a part of telling him, if you want the women's vote or you want their support, this is what you should do. And she realized that in Ghana, the problem they have is that these women are nameless and faceless. Lucky for them, much like us, and let me divert a bit, how many of us have grandparents that are over 100 in the room? Okay, I have a couple of hands. How many of us 10 years ago had grandparents that, 2014, in 2014, did you have grandparents who are about 100? Did you ever stop to think, for context, that means that person was born 1914? That means that this was living memory, right, that you could actually touch. So where we cannot go beyond ChatGPT, and some of us at least know when Twitter started, we're old suddenly, right? But we had these people who have seen Lord Lugard, they've seen all the military governments that came, they saw the fight for independence up until what we are today. So they have a good perspective of what it means for Nigeria to have changed. Many of us say Nigeria has regressed, but I imagine what Nigeria is for them or was for them before they passed on. So these are the kinds of people I think of when I think about what documentation means. And perhaps they offer a closer insight into the real nuances of Nigeria. And at archiving, you've done something like that. You've taken from the papers and shown us what people were talking about when it came to marrying early, when it came to matters around women's rights, matters around things like abortion, matters around premarital sex even. You've published those series. And I'm curious as to what sort of insight that gives you and what that says for our documentation today and the kinds of people we should be documenting.
I'll start with the last question. The types of people we should be documenting is everyone. To be honest, like storage is getting cheaper and cheaper every day, and like in my dream world, you just had a booth in every corner or city, and people would just go there and just yap about their lives and just collect it. But like, it is just super important that as many perspectives as we can collect. There's a period in my life when I was feeling very, very stuck in Lagos. I just used to literally walk up to random people and just ask them questions about their life, and they indulged me. Praise the Lord. Um, that was when I first learned, for example, that half of the people that that Lagosians like to call Aboki, so it was like, were not even like Hausa people. Many of them were like from Chibok. Many of them were from like Mubi. I'd see people, some would say, oh yeah, this is like, oh yes, Aboki, Aboki, someone who used to sell water. It was actually from Mali. It was a black Tuareg. And we had this 15-minute conversation about like the conflict in that was happening in his hometown. And I was like, oh, why didn't you stay with the Tuaregs? It was like, we were the black Tuaregs. They don't rate us. And like that was colorism. That was me learning colorism from the water guy in Surulere, right? Without any of the big panel English. So like, and so like his perspective also matters, because how did he end up here? How many countries did he have to go through to get here? I think if from an urgency standpoint of why every perspective matters, there's an episode from 2020. A friend of mine, her grandfather was really old, and she was like, she wanted me to work on his autobiography, to ghostwrite it, and I was very excited to do that. I spent the first meeting convincing him that he was Igbo, and so I spent the first meeting convincing him that like this Yoruba Muslim boy was not going to damage his life or his memories by writing nonsense about him, and that paid off. By our second meeting, he was already struggling to speak. It rained heavily that day, so I could barely hear him. I kept leaning in, and I was barely hearing anything, and he had died by our third meeting. This man grew up in a small village in Anambra State. He went to school in another town. He literally saw Nigeria come together. When Nigeria was falling apart, he was one of those people in the plains going about with Achebe and Kenneth Dike trying to make the case for like a Biafran state. And he's just dead. Like everything he saw, his experiences, his POV, anything he did not gist his children, gone, right? So I think that for me, we need a lot of the documentation to be decentralized, because that is how we're able to capture as many perspectives as possible. Then we need to figure out systems to aggregate them and bring them together, so that one, we can archive them and preserve them, but more importantly, we can make them accessible to people, and then finally we can begin to like make sense of them. It just feels like there's just so much sense making that is not happening. It's a lot of the practices like even around like childbirth. Like I've heard an old woman say that, oh, there's some stuff that you give like a woman who is in labor and it helps with the pain and all of those things. And like we just washed all of those things away and like picked up all the other things we picked up. And it's like I wonder if like even if you, and the thing for me about knowledge is not that it is sacred, right? It is that it's like it fills a vacuum. But when you take knowledge, you are able to abrogate, interrogate, improve, because the absolute worst thing for progress is starting from zero. I guess that's my own nemesis, vacuums. Yeah.
So I'm going to do one more question before I open up to the floor.
Yeah.
But
have we been here that long?
yes, we have. A quick aside, you know, when you talk about how people use the word aboki down south,
Yeah.
it's very interesting for a northerner who goes down south, because aboki is, at least for us when we use it, aboki na ya, it's always followed by that addition as opposed to just aboki. And it reminded me of, there's a paper that was published by I think a lecturer in Udus, Usman Danfodio University. It's titled, I Am a Bandit. I don't know who has seen it. And because, of course, now it has shifted from aboki to one of two things. It's either Fulani, which is supposed to be a derogatory term now down south, or they just call you bandit, right? They call you a bandit. And so a way of reclaiming that word, even though maybe that's not the kind of word that we want to reclaim. If you want to reclaim a bookie, you kind of understand why there's a need to reclaim it. But my final question would be, drawing from archiving, what you can tell us in the room about the perception of northern Nigeria in what has been documented, and what work we need to do right now, whether it's in filling in the gap from our perspectives or in correcting the narrative.
So the first thing is that there just aren't enough narratives, like documented narratives of the North. Like a few years ago, I think we were talking about it earlier, I was collecting books on the Nigerian Civil War. I have about 53 or 4 accounts of the Nigerian Civil War. Less than 4 of them are from the North, right? In fact, when I was having a conversation with Kaderia in 2022, I was telling her I was about to start researching on the Nigerian Civil War. Now, this is me who had already crossed over a dozen books from a reading standpoint at the time. And she said something, she was like, I hope you people do the right thing. I'm like, you know how she gets. And then I was like, yeah, like, get it off your chest. And she said that she's not excusing anything that happened. But I should think about it this way, that the North already knew that it was like tracking behind from a development standpoint, right? And it had a few figures that were trying to close that gap. Had Ahmadu Bello, it had like what Tafawa Balewa represented and all these people. And like, so whatever optimism existed in the North, like these were the symbols of that optimism. And in one night, they were all crushed in one night. I said, what do you think that does to the people? And I was like, oh, I never thought about it like that before. Why haven't I thought about that? Because like no one wrote anything. Not enough people were writing stuff about it.
Is it that no one wrote it, or is that maybe there's a language barrier? Because I imagine that there might be writings in Hausa and there's just not access and translation.
So outside of newspapers, when you like look at like literature, like books, memoirs, there are not that many accounts written by people who experienced, like even like one of the accounts from the North, I think it was Araba, Joe Garba, also one of the plotters. Like very, very few accounts were written by people who like fought in that war. So yeah, that is. But also, even like when you look at the media landscape outside of Gasket, like I saw when I entered Arewa House, I found a couple of like I saw like a TV paper, I saw an Igala paper, and I was like, oh man, like left to me, like I'd like to just bring a scanner and just stay there and just be scanning everything, right? Because again, the enemy is the vacuum. There just aren't enough perspectives, and those perspectives need to be surfaced. Like I feel like even in the present today, like we need more people who are just like, and they already exist. Follow some of them on Instagram, but we need more people who are just going about and just making videos of like even the North as it is today. Because I traveled around Nigeria in 2017, and between 2017 and now, like the conversations I have with people, particularly about the Northwest, it almost feels like I was in a very different place. Because like I remember being in Zamfara in 2017, and like Gusau and like all of that. And because I was traveling there was 4 of us traveling. I was the only Muslim, and we had all been prepped, legit, that oh yeah, like you are not going, like you are Christians, they're going to Zamfara, right? And I know it sounds like lame, right? It sounds lame because we're in Kaduna. In Lagos, it is not lame, right? And I was like, we're going to play a small game. I did not know the outcome of that game. And we arrived at night, and we started counting everybody we met and trying to gauge if they're Muslim or Christian. The first 9 people we encountered that night in Gusau, and when I say 9 people, I mean like decent places. They were working at the hotel, our keke guy, the restaurant. There's that one restaurant that everybody goes in Gusau. like we counted the first 9 people we engaged with were all Christians. Like that was just a ridiculous coincidence, right? But not enough people like even know this. And I think that like documentation is not even just for other people, it is for ourselves. Because if you don't document, if you just keep quiet, and I see it on Twitter all the time where people say, oh, they're twisting narrative, oh yeah, give us another narrative. Like, give us something to work with, right? And a lot of the time, even if no one believes it, like that's their business. As long as your own truth and it exists somewhere, like that is always a good start for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm opening up for questions.
Oh,
I see one hand, I see another hand, I see a third hand, I see a fourth hand. We've got some time. Let's start. Actually, can you come here? Let's start here, because I saw the first hand up was actually here. Can we come here? Please. So what we're going to do very quickly, please, so that we can take as many questions as we can. I can see hands in the back of the room. As many questions as we can. I don't want to interrupt you, but I will interrupt you if you surpass a minute.
Should I run
want to
and
take
roving mics?
They've got roving mics.
Okay.
I want to take 3 questions at once from this side. We'll come back to Fuad. We'll do another 3 at once from this side. Okay? Where's the microphone? Fantastic. Right here. Please, when you get up, introduce yourself. Fuad is standing, so I can't sit.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Right.
My name is Abba Musa Idris, and I'm very happy about this discussion because it is one of the things that I want to venture into. As an expert on this, what mistakes did you make? Like when you first started documentation and archiving, that you can tell any mentee of yours to avoid when he is starting today? That's the first thing. And you said that, I quote, documentation is for ourselves. Now, the world has changed. ChatGPT has come. Reading culture is dying down, if not because of the associations that we have. Now, how do you get people to read, to go through, to experiment the kind of documentation that you have been documenting, and also the archiving? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a second question. Can I see the hands up here again? Okay, there's a gentleman in the back. We'll take the 2 of them. Then we do answers, and then we'll come to this side of the room. Moazu. That's Moazu, yes.
Okay.
Please reintroduce yourself in case I mispronounced your name.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Moazu. I am a freelance journalist and a student. So my question is it's concerning how this oral tradition where stories are being passed down. And we understand the concept of stories being archived, being documented and archived. But then why, where do we start from? I'm talking this generation because I don't think we're curious enough about a lot of things. I went back to Bida last year to find out specifically about an artifact I saw online being sold. And I couldn't even find anybody to explain to me the origin of that artifact. And then it's online being auctioned out. And then there is the tag of Bida. It's from the ancient city of Bida and all of those. So how do we spark this curiosity when we talk about documenting and then moving to archiving? Thank you very much.
Final question on this side? Okay, yes, he's ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aliyu Mohammed. I think my question is towards the end of the panel where you made mention of people profiling us as Aboki. I have been to many states, and the last time I was in Delta State, one person called me Aboki, and I called him Aboki too. Then the fight starts. Why should I call him? So after the holidays and all of that, then he came to realize I can't speak the little I could. Then he says, Aboki is not for everyone. So my question is, why is that they use few of the people they knew, why did they judge us by the few they knew? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Fuad, let's do these 3 questions so that we can come to this side of the room.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start from the last one. Why did they judge us by the few? I think there's a word for it. It's called stereotypes. We all do it. It's a bias we all default to. But because it's a bias that exists, doesn't mean we should tolerate it. So it's a good thing you called it out by trolling him and calling him a bookie. Coincidentally, my brother went to school in Delta State. He was the best in his class. He's the more serious sibling, the more promising sibling. And one day, they were all heading to another class, and someone's slippers got caught, like those ripped. My brother was like, "Oh, let me help you," and he was like, and the guy just said, "I tell you, saying all of them they learn shoemaker." And he genuinely meant it, right? When I schooled in the East. My mom had a tendency to just fling us. I wonder why. I'll just say, "Oh, my name is Fuad," and someone else says, "Yade," and I'm like, "Yeah, Lafia," and they just start speaking. And I just like, "Yeah, Najinua," and they're like, I'm from Yoruba. I'm like Yoruba. Like my parents were born in Lagos Island. They're like, "Are you a Muslim?" It sounds wild, but just think of the ridiculous things that you've heard your parents say about people from other places. All of us have it, in a sense. The solution to that is actually just shaming people. I believe in shame as an instrument, for good outcomes, not all outcomes. Don't shame people for just trying to not harm other people. Then, about the curiosity question, personally, I tend to not. A lot of my training is hyper-capitalist. To be honest, I think the ISIS of capitalism is venture capital, and the only companies I've worked at before archiving are all backed by VC firms. They like their profit margins and everything. And one of the things you learn is that if you want people to behave in a certain way, you don't moralize the problem. You create incentives to make them behave in that way. For example, the reason why when you're on Twitter or Instagram, you're always scrolling and it never ends is because they know your brain is enjoying it. So they're always throwing more stuff at it. If you want people to become curious about history, make it cool. Make it interesting. Make it not boring. We all know more. We know about everybody here. Is there anybody that doesn't know? Is there anybody here that doesn't know Thor? If you know Thor, raise your hand.
We know Shango.
If you know Shango, we now know Shango because of film. But it's if you want people to know these things, make it cool. To be very, very honest, I'm not really keen on saying, "Oh, yes, the right thing. We need to know our history." Let it not be boring. Even at archiving, and which now leads me to your own question about how do we get people to read what we're documenting. We don't need them to read it. We need to find people who can make it cool for them, right? So, for example, we have, last year, this dude named Jad Abumrad. Does anybody here listen to podcasts? Is there any podcast nerd here? Radiolab. Any Radiolab person? Radiolab is like NPR in that class of podcasts. And he was working on a podcast about Fela Kuti Fienu Man. And he reached out to us and he was like, "Oh, help us do research for papers." And we gathered all these really, really dusty, boring newspaper snippets. And he made it into this really, really sick podcast. That, I think it was number 1 on the New Yorker list for podcast of the year, right? Because of our boring research. Has anybody heard of the film My Father's Shadow? So when they're doing the world building for the film, we're also talking to them about how did this place look? At the premiere, we had to recreate a living room from 1993, and everybody went there and were taking pictures. You didn't have to educate anyone about why are we not curious about how the hut people used to live in? We just made it sexy and everybody's snapping there. let us not. It's very important that we do not moralize the problem, because what moralizing does, especially in the context of like stuff you want people to adopt, in this kind of case, this is weird coming from someone that said shame people earlier. Like just make it cool, make it sexy, make people want to brag about it, and it just makes a ton of the difference. I was going around when I was inside Arewa House, like Saldana's, like the Saldana Gallery and everything, and I was taking photos. I did not send it to all my friends. I didn't even send it to my wife. I sent it to my friend who cares deeply about design and architecture, and he has been texting me, send me more pictures, because that is cool to him. So that's how you want to think about it. You want to think about whatever you're offering people as a product. Like, you need to make them care. And I like to say that even the people who preceded us, that we draw a lot of our morality from, they saw the world like this. One of my favorite tiny bits of Sirah is that because of who Usman was, like, the Prophet did not tell Usman that, oh, like, Allah sent it to come and like save the Arabs. No, he said Allah sent it to you. And Usman was like, me? Right? And like, of course, there's the Jesus version, which is that Jesus did not come tell those fishermen that, oh, like, come and become evangelists. And he said, I will make you what? Fishers of men. Like just whatever you want to sell, just sell it. Yeah. Sorry, I was already getting too much into it. Yeah. What mistakes did I make? The question is, what mistakes did I not make? To be honest, I feel like everything, I like, it almost feels like every time we are short-sighted, we are making a mistake. So a question you want to always ask yourself is, what we are doing now, what will matter in 25 years? It sounds really wild to think about 25 years when you are still thinking about the 2027 elections. But the question you want to ask yourself is, what will matter in 25 years? For us at Archiving, we looked at digitizing images, like newspaper scans. And we're like, oh, if we scan at 100 dpi, it's cheaper. We're going to save megabytes and save storage. But the problem is that at 400 dpi, you can zoom in to a letter on a newspaper page, and it's very sharp as a portrait. That means that any machine can read it at any time. So I don't know how to help you about mistakes, because you're going to make a ton of them. Whatever you want to do in life, I guess. But like, the most important question we ask ourselves is that, what are the things that will matter in 25 years? Yeah. Our money has almost finished, so that's stressful. But like, yeah.
Okay. So very quickly, I'm conscious of time. I know that was the first hand. Namse, we'll do one here.
I really
let's
hope
see
I
how
answered
we
your
can
questions.
get all 4 questions together, right? So let's start with Namse, and then the microphone will come here. Briefly.
Right. Briefly, yes, very brief.
My time is up.
My question is about the general idea of knowledge production, and how do, as an archivist, how do you intend to deconstruct and demystify the whole centrality of knowledge production while taking into consideration the power dynamics? Like we've seen lots of history written by the conquerors or the victors. So how do we take into consideration the power dynamics in constituting what is valid knowledge to be archived?
All right. So I'm coming round because time, right?
I will make it very brief. Assalamu alaikum once again. My name is Mr. Dabu. My name is Dabu. Yeah? Okay. The questions that the interviewer put to you wasn't clear. And the questions was about, I think, documentation. Am I right if I say documentation needs vigorous reading? Active reading has to do with reading culture. And it is a well-known fact that the people that have great knowledge of history are likely to sink into ground. And people of nowadays, or the students of nowadays, are running away from reading. And what is the alternative way of documenting history? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. One, I have like 30 seconds
hello.
for you.
I think.
Oh, I missed you. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Please go ahead.
My name is Rukaya Muhammad Adam. Well, this is a very interesting topic you have here. But my question here is, she asked about while archiving. I want to know your why, actually.
Why?
Yes. And then why, after knowing your why, I want to know, like, she asked about the River Niger and River Benue, and the documentation was wrong. Due to the colonization, they said Lugard, Abimongo Park, discover it. And then, initially, it wasn't Mongo Park. So you didn't answer that question. I want to know the answer. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. My name is Suleiman Abdullahi. I'm a visual storyteller. My question for you is, I want to know, as an archivist, what's the approach you use in extracting those stories and history? Because as a storyteller, I know it's hard. People actually doesn't used to tell their stories easily. So what's their actual approach you use to extract those stories? And do you have any purpose or approach you use in digitalizing your stories that you actually archive?
So I think that person, the girl, I didn't hear her
Please
question.
stand so we can see you.
Okay.
Thank you. Your name?
My name is Ahmadu. So I really like that you talked about Mongo Park and his so-called discovery. So recently I was on TikTok and there was this indigenous American who was talking about how Columbus did not discover America. And I quickly just swiped because I don't want to deal with the complexity of addressing something like that. But then you brought up Mongo Park and how there is this narrative that he discovered River Niger. And we're talking about documentation and archiving. That has been documented and archived. It's in history. If you are reading it from, let's say, the Philippines, you will hear that, yes, in the context of River Niger, it was discovered by Mongo Park. So how do we, as Nigerians, address this so-called narrative to make sure that we reclaim the story of Mongo Park, or the story of River Niger, not Mongo Park?
Okay, I'll start with the last question. So, first of all, it's super important to also understand that, in a sense, the study of history is the study of a time. The reason why, so everybody here, I think at least 90% of the room knows Cave Hira. Like the cave where, like if it was white, it's like, who discovered Cave Hira? I think that a lot of why, white people who discovered this, who discovered that, is because a lot of those discoveries were happening in a society where it was highly incentivized to discover. So, it's so important to understand the context of Europe at the time of a lot of these discoveries. That's the only reason why a person will carry his leg and go to a place and go and die of malaria, because of the glory that might come with it. So that context is just useful. But who discovered River Niger? People had been using it for thousands of years. It was always there for them. So the idea of discovery, because it was not a society that, I guess, cared about it in that context of just, I found this river somewhere. That's why, the concept of discovery does not matter. It's like, who discovered Donkwa? Anyway. So, how do you intend to demystify the centrality of, to be very, as you were speaking, I was like, my God, these people might have overestimated. But to be honest, there are a couple of ways to demystify it. For us, the primary way is access. We just make it accessible for all kinds of people to come and do all kinds of things. Sometimes I'm scrolling on Twitter and I'm like, and someone says, I found a comic strip of a woman. She was entering her house. Someone had drawn a comic of a woman entering her house, and armed robbers ambushed her, and she's like, "Oh my God, please, my baby, my baby!" And they give her a bag, and she pulls out a shotgun from her bag and kills the four armed robbers. And at the end of the comic strip, the thread, I see a newspaper clipping. I'm like, "Oh, from archiving." Apparently, it was a newspaper story from 1996. And when people saw that newspaper story, they were like, "Oh, if this happened in Okota, like the newspaper is saying, this is realistic because everybody had shotgun in their house, right?" For me, that is a form of like, I want to read the question. That's the form of demystifying the centrality of knowledge production. It's like once people have access, it creates unlimited utility, and all kinds of people can do all kinds of things. People reach out to me from like universities, like abroad, and are like, "Wow, so I'm using it to teach my class." I'm like, "Interesting." And they start telling me about what the class is about, and I'm like, "So what do you think about it?" I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Yeah, so access and giving people money to do stuff. When people give us money, we give other people money to do stuff with it. What's the alternative way of documenting history of people if people aren't reading? TikTok. Next question. Why archiving? To be honest, I have bad friends because I have friends who, while I was starting archiving, were focused on getting rich. They are rich now. I'm not. But it was actually a curiosity that, for lack of a better word, I overindulged in. I was ranting and crashing out all the time about how I couldn't find anything if I had questions about the past. And I accidentally stumbled on, I was traveling through Sokoto from Niger, and I stumbled on Usman and Fodio archives, and I saw old newspapers, and they said, "Oh, there are many old newspapers in many archives across the country." And I'm like, "Oh, how many archives are there? How many archives are there? Oh, great, there are many. Oh, how many papers do they have? Oh, they have like tens of thousands of papers. Oh, how many can we digitize?" And next thing, I'm going to CAC. Next thing, I'm begging for money everywhere. Next thing, I'm quitting my job to scan old newspapers. So you need good friends. I'm not sure why they're clapping, but I'm telling you about my financial issues that are clapping. What's the approach? I really hope I'm answering people's questions. If I'm not, yeah. What's the approach we use in extracting these stories? Personally, what I find interesting. I'm not here to. The world is boring. I can't contribute my own boredom to it. So hopefully I find something interesting, and then I hope other people find it interesting. That's fundamentally the approach.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Fuad Law, please put your hands together. And as we step off the stage, Hibaf is looking for good friends. So if you have money, please see Sada, see Salma.
Same problem, I imagine. They had friends that were going to get rich, and you're like, "Oh, like culture."
Thank you, Hibaf 2025. That's the panel.
Oh yeah, we need to take a picture.
Barka da zuwa bikin baje kolin littattafai da fasahohin Hausawa karo na 5. Muna miƙa ɗumbin godiyarmu zuwa ga gidauniyar Open Society, waɗanda da tallafinsu ne bikin nan ke gudana. Tattaunawarmu ta gaba za ta nazarci yadda ilimin tsafi da sihirin Hausawa ya kasance ta mahangar tarihi da al'adu da fahimtar zamani. Dr. Alamuna Nuhu da Mustapha Sa'idu Abubakar, wazirin Askar Kano, da Ado Usman Fanisau za su tattauna yadda Hausawa ke sarrafa da tantancewa da fahimtar ayyukan tsafi da sihiri a tsakanin imani da al'adu da sauye-sauyen zamani. Zama ne da zai duba yadda ake rayuwa da waɗannan aƙidu da yadda ake kallonsu a yau da matsayinsu a tsarin tunanin Hausawa. Ku taya mu yi wa waɗannan manyan baƙi maraba da zuwa wannan gagarumin biki.
To jama'a assalamu alaikum. Muna yi ma bakin taron Hibaf na shekarar 2025 barka da zuwa. Sunana Alamuna Nuhu, sashin nazarin harsunan Najeriya da kimiyyar harshe, Jami'ar Jihar Kaduna. Tare da ni akwai Malam Ado Muhammad Fanisau daga Kano da kuma wazirin askar Kano, Jihar Kano, Malam Mustapha Sa'idu. Wato maudu'in da Hibaf ta bamu mu tattauna a kansa shine ilimin tsafi da sihirin Hausawa. Wato da a ce ana yin kutse a cikin wani shiri a cikin shiri, na so tun ɗazu in yi kutse cikin shirin su Dr. Dukko, saboda sun yi matashiya akan abin da muke so mu tattauna, cewa Hausawa suna da ilimi nasu na musamman wanda sai an yi tarbiyya ake koyansa. Shi kuma ilimin nan yana da matukar muhimmanci a cikin zamantakewar rayuwar Hausawa. Wato a takaice shi kalar waɗannan fannonin ilimi su ne sinadaran zamantakewa da kuma sana'o'i, tsarin mulki, siyasa da komi na rayuwar Hausawa. Idan babu su waɗannan ɓangarorin, su waɗannan sana'o'in, tsarin mulki, siyasar ba sa tafiya, ana yin su ne lami lafiya. Kafin in shiga cikin bayanin misali, ai abin da ke yawo cikin social media shine wani dan majalisa ya je ƙauyensu a jihar Zamfara kawai suka kama dukan shi. Da a ce irin ilimin nan ana tattalin shi, ta ya ma za a yi? Yana waigo ya kalle su, ya za a yi? Ya ma ajiyawa su ko kuma tsaya za su yi daga nan. Wato an yi watsi da al'amuran ne. In ka bar gida kuma shi kenan gida sai ya baka. Wato yana da kyau waɗanda suke ƙasa da shekara 18 su fahimta, in dai Hausawa ne, bar zama locust, bar zama ungwarimi, bar zama koma ina ne. Wato iyaye da kakanni sai dai ba su zuwa da kai ƙauye, akwai ilimi naku na gargajiya da aka gada iyaye da kakanni. Amma abin da ke da muhimmanci, yana da kyau a gane menene ya bambanta tsafi da kuma sihiri. Ina ganin shi yasa ake ta samun takaddama tsakanin malamai masu da'awa ko kuma a kai tsayin ce maka malaman izala. Duk abin da aka gani za a ce kawai ai tsafi ne. Akwai abin da yake tsafi, akwai abin da yake ba tsafi ba ne. Abu yana kasancewa tsafi da zarar ka haɗa shi da jini, kuma koma wani iri ne. Abin da yake tsafi da zarar ka haɗa shi da najasa, ta fitsari ne, ta kashi ne, ta maniyi ne, ta menene, za a sarrafa shi ne, ko a shafa shi, ko a ce a ci, ko a ɗaura. Naka da an yi waɗannan abubuwa sun zama tsafi. Da zarar an samo sassan jikin wata dabba, wadda a matsayinka na Bahaushe, kila kana gargajiya, to ko a gargajiyar na an ɗauko shi a mushe, duk da kana cin mushe, amma dai an ɗauko shi a mushe an sarrafa shi, ya riga ya zama tsafi. To yana da kyau a gane cewa to ko shi a tsafi ɗin yana rukuni ne. Matakin farko Bahaushe ya riƙe tsafi ne a matsayin hanyar shi ta bauta, saboda yana yi ma iskoki hidima. Shi tsafi in aka ce tsafi, wato yi wa iskoki hidima, yi musu biyayya, yi musu da'a, kai kuma ka ga abin da kake so, yadda kake so, sanda kake so. Idan ba bauta za a yi ba, to sai a yi shi dan abuwaya. Wato da na zo gurin da shi kenan ina shigowa kowa sai ya mike, saboda ya riga ya buwa ya gawurta, saboda ya riga ya shirin shi tuntuni. Shi da waɗanda ya yarda da su ya ba su amanna, sun ba shi amanna, abin da yake so, sanda yake so, duk zai wakana. To idan ko ba haka nan ba, za a yi shi ne saboda magani. Kai ya fitine ne, ya matsa ni, kyale shi, samo min kuciya ko samo min tantabara, yana haɗa kaza da kaza yana mai shi kenan. In ya tafi wallahi bai ƙara dawowa nan garin, saboda ai dama da ni da shi muke kokari mu buga. Ina fata an gane. To idan kuma ba wannan ba, sai a je rukuni na hudu. Idan ba bauta akai ba, idan ba magani akai ba, idan ba buwaya akai ba, akwai gaba shi ta hudu. To duk irin waɗannan suna da bambanci da a ce an yi sihiri. Sihiri shine a yi maka abin da shi ba tsafi ba ne, shi ba rufa ido ba ne, shi ba kuma surkulla ba ne, amma da zara an gan shi sai jama'a su tunanin tsafi ne aka yi. kai tsaye tsafi shine abin da iska take da tasiri a cikinsa. Iska ce aka yi amfani da ita kai tsaye. Ko da ko yanzu a nan gurin da muke zaune ba a yi yanka ba, ba a yi wata hidima ba, ba a yi wani aiki ba, ai tun tale-tale can an riga an yi ta, an kuma samu yadda tsakanin juna. In ma shi ne bai yi ba, iyaye da kakanni sun riga sun yi mashi. Misali, wanda da nake tattauna yana ga mai ce ai ba sai an yi ba da yana mai yarin ta gona ba, ai haka kawai da ya taba irin shi kenan aka je aka shuka, ai an kare magana, ai shi iyayen shi ba sun san yana tare da wani a gari ba, to za su kyale shi ne ya ji kunya hanyar neman abincin shi sai ya samu sannan iyayen su samu. In shi bai yi ba iyayen sun mashi, amma bayan da ka gan shi ka ce yana tsafi, amma su iyayen sun riga sun tsafa shi tunda abin is spiritual. Ina fata an gane. To akwai bambanci tsakanin tsafi da kuma sihiri. Shi sihiri za a iya haɗa maka misali, kana kawo min gashin mage yanzu, kana kawo min gashin kare, kana kawo min gashin mage, kare da na kura, ina raba ma wance da wane. Me ta baba in mun fita ya gwada, ina raba su. Har abada an rabu kuma. Akwai hikima da za a yi ma, sihiri ne za a yi ma, ba tsafi ba ne. In kana ganin ba su haɗu sun ƙi jituwa an yi taƙi, ana gwada ma. Bari ba da misali, ai kila akwai rukunin ɗaliban da aka sace waya, ai an dawo da ita ko? Wato ba mu son mu zaƙe ne saboda muna matasa da an matsa yarinta kar abin son tsiye jaka. Kawai akan dai ɗan bakin gwargwado ne, amma ina ganin akwai ɗalibai a nan an sace waya, na gaya musu tana ajin kuma ba a sayar ba, ba a yi wafin ba, ba a yi komi ba, na ce kuma ku jira sai an dawo da ita. A ƙarshe ina aka yi da ka shiga faculty of art ga din ɗin na lokacin akan janareton da nan ba a tada shi nan aka zo aka dawo da ita. Akwai shaida nan na ga ana dawo da ita. So ilimi ne akwai shi. Na so da Dr. Dukwana ne ce me yasa ga shi da 'ya'yan shi guda 10 ne ko 20 da amma ɗaya kawai ya iya samun ilimin nan. Wato shi ilimi ko a ajin ku haƙƙin malami ne an ɗauke shi ya yi muku lacca. Amma wanda ya bi malam sau da kafa yana iya samun ƙarin ilimin da zai iya cin A da B ka ci C da E da F. Sai ka yi ladabi ka yi biyayya. Dalili kenan malami kan zaɓo haziki ya ta tarbiyyar shi saboda ya ga cewa kai wannan na iya zama magajina, bari ba history ne ya kamata ba, na ga ya fi gane a harshe, sai ya ɗauke shi a mai transfer daga can zuwa wani wuri. To abin da ya sa iyaye ba su son sakarwa 'ya'ya sai sun gane cewa wanne ne suka natsu da hankalin shi zai iya taka tsantsan ya rike abin nan, saboda da zarar wani abu ya dan zaburar da shi zai iya gwadawa. To wannan tsafi kenan, wannan kuma sihiri. To amma akwai abin da ake ce ma surkulle. Surkulle ko surkulle surutu ne ake haɗawa da kulli na mai maganganu kuma a ga tasiri na wani aiki, wani abu ya faru. Misali, da na yau shiri na so in ɗauke wannan wutar yanzu nan, a ji sautin abin da zan faɗi ina cewa duhun duhu ma uwar duhu baƙin bajimi bi gamba. Misali, kaji ana ambatar duhu, ana ambatar wasu abubuwa, to sannan ne ake sa ran abin da zai faru na duhun ya faru. Amma ta ya faru sai an ji sanda ake magana na surutu ana kuma ƙuƙƙulla shi na aka da abin da ake so ya faru kuma sai an sanya wani abu mai alaƙa da shi. So da haka surkulla kenan. Akwai abin da ba surkulla ba ne, siddabaru ne, surutu ne za a haɗa maka da dubaru. Na haka tsafi daban, sihiri daban, surkulla daban, siddabaru daban. Ilimi ne a matakai daban-daban, akwai su har yanzu suna nan suna aiki, sai dai sai in ka yi tarbiyya ka same su, kuma kana iya kwashe shekaru kana tarbiyya ba tare da ka same su ba. Malam Ado, ga yaronka kuna tafi tare da shi, komi kake yi yake yi, tarbiyya yake yi, nema yake a bashi. Allah kaɗai san shekarun da kwai, amma iyaka abin da zai iya yi daban, saboda da zai iya wakilta ka yau da shi ya zo. To bai kai matakin a ce an saka mashi komi da komi ba, ana nan ana ta kiwon shi ne. Ina fata an gane. To a cikin wannan yammaci a tare da ni kamar yadda ni ce akwai Malam Ado Muhammad Fanisau da wazirin sarkin aska. Za mu so a ce ku ji ta bakinsu ko da ɗan yaya ne, sannan abin nan da ake jin muna faɗi a tabbata a'a ba faɗin ba ne, a'a akwai shi ilimin akwai shi kuma an sadar da shi iyaye da kakanni har yanzu akwai wanda suka tattala shi ana tanadar bakar tambaya domin bakin rana. Zan ba da misali, ina jin satin da ya wuce tsakanin jihar Ilorin kwara kenan ko Niger, wato na ga inda aka yi kidnapping an nuna social media gaban didin nan duk suna bacci. Shi wannan ilimin dai shi suka tattala shi suka amfani da shi. Na so duk nan ai shi abin nan da ya faɗi ya ce a ƙauyensu ai shi ne in ka je cikin littafin magana jari labarin anunu da mahauci ko ai labarin bamagujen nan to ai ya ce ai ko ba komi ya ce ga inda zai yanka ko ba komi zai kai ma gunkin gidansa ya sha jini. Ai shi wannan abin in shi Dr. Duko bai gane ba shine gunkin garinsu, saboda bahaushe yana da gunki. Abin da yake ce ma gunki wannan tsamiyar ita ce gunki, kuma iska ce yake zaune kanta, kuma ita ai kai imani da ita. Amma kamar yadda ya bada bayani suna bangaren izala kuma su ma sun imani abin nan ba zai aiki ba, naka ba zai aikin ba zai yi ba. Amma kuma ina son ya faɗaɗa bincike in aka koma tabbas a cikin dattijai a garin nan akwai wanda suke kiyaye wannan abin, in dai ba a sare ba har yanzu sun sa amfanin shi, su suna ganin amfanin shi yana kuma na yana amfani. In ka tasa ni yanzu da mun koma jihar Katsina na san ɗaiɗaiku inda zan kai ka akwai gunki kuma yana aiki, tabbas akwai su, sai dai kawai matsala ɗaya, kana ɓangaren duk ne ka yi imani da Allah shikenan, a'a ka yi imani abin nan kana taba akwai matsala shikenan. Abin dama da imani yake tafiya, akwai duk yadda ka so zai yi aiki, akwai duk yadda ka so ba zai yi aiki ba, saboda me batu ne na me imani. Shi yasa idan toka na dauka na baka na ce a kiyaye wala kana zuwa aiki za ta yi, amma ai bai riga ya yi imani ba, saboda yana gani na yanzu nan haka ai yadda na yau shiga da yadda suka yau shiga ai ya ga masu abin, amma nan dai surutun ne shine matsalas. Tashin farko yana cewa zan baka za ka ce ba za ka yadda ba, ai ban yau shirin yadda na masu bayar da maganin yake ba. To masu maganin na gargajiya wani lokaci sukan yi shiri irin nasu, mukan yi irin shiri irin namu, saboda batu ne ba takarda aka yi ba, an yi takarda sannan sai ka je wurin masu abin sannan za ka samu alƙalaman da za ka rubuta su cikin takardar. Sai dai kawai mukan yi taka tsantsan ne kamar ta yadda malam Duku ya ce, wato akwai batu na sunna, akwai batu na ilimi, akwai batu na wayewa. To bisa wannan dalili za mu yi ƙoƙari don kafa hujja cewa ilimin Hausawa akwai sauran shi yana nan, amma dai zan so ku bani dama in harshen ku in ci muku albasa. Batun tsafi akwai shi har yau har gobe na yadda akwai tsafi yana nan, tsafi gaskiya mai shi ana yi, amma mu yi haƙuri wallahi ba don ina jin tsoro ba. Akwai mata a wurin nan su suka fi komi rauni, ana jarraba wani abu da iska zai tashi, zancen ma in akwai matakin da za a kai shi suna iya fara burkicewa, ba ma abin aka aiwatar ba. Mun gwada ba ɗaya ba ba biyu ba a ji, zancen ma da an zurfafa bayanan, ana kiran sunayen aljanu, ana kiran ɗabi'unsu, ana kiran abin da suke, wasu na iya fara tashi suna burkicewa yanzu. To da sun fara burkicewa yanzu shikenan ba a rasa yadda za a yi da su, amma kuma ka jaza aiki don ba shi aka zo yi ba. To za a yi bakin abin da ya sawwaka domin a gwada shaida cewa abin da ake bayani akwai. Malado za mu baka minti biyu kai mana dan fashin bagi abin da ya shafi tsafi da sihiri kafin mu je ga malam Mustapha.
Jama'a assalamu alaikum, mahalarta taro da fatan mun haɗu lafiya, Allah ya mai da mu gidajenmu lafiya, alfarma annabi da alƙur'ani. Wato tsafi gaske mai yinsa, gaske wanda ya yarda da shi, kuma wani layi ne wanda tun shekarun baya can aru kakannin iyaye suka keto wannan matsalar, suka yi abinsu a lokacinsu, suka ci riba abinsu a lokacinsu, kuma a lokacinsu wannan abin shine abin bautarsu kuma shine bautarsu. Saboda haka kuma ya kasu fanni kowane bangare kowane sashi da irin nasu yadda suke sarrafa aljani. Shi tsafi dole ne sai ka bibiyi aljani ka neme shi, akalla ya ce kaza ka yi kaza mataki har ya kai matakin yadda da kai, har ya kai matakin ya amince da kai, har ya kai matakin kuma ita gidanka. In yi zo gidanka kuma ya amince zai maka shidima akan kowane irin al'amari na rayuwarka. Wa'annan matakai shine ake magana akan matsala ta tsafi ko kuma aljani. To yanzu zamani ya zo mana, wa'annan tsafe-tsafe duk Allah ya kawo mana da su, musulunci ya shigo ya bazu a sassa kowane irin guri. Kuma waɗanda suka yi waɗannan abubuwa ma, waɗanda suka bari har yanzu ma suna cikin wani irin ƙangi na da sun bari, da sun iya kakannin suna yi yanzu kuma sun bari. Muna samun irin waɗannan matsaloli ga an ce aljani ce ai tsafin gidansu ne tuntuni bai ruguje ba ko kuma bai lalace ba, still har wannan lokacin ina amfani, ina tasiri ga wa'ansu al'amura, sai dai kuma ba a yi masa abin da kakanni suke yi, to ya zai musu fitina. Wannan muna samun irin waɗannan kala-kala. Shi kuma sihiri kalma ce wacce ta da mai faɗi. In na ga dama zan maka sihiri in ɗaure maka bakin karɓi wani abu, in na ga dama zan maka sihiri ka kasa tafiya, in na ga dama zan miki sihiri don ki so ni, in na ga dama zan miki sihiri don ki guji wane da wane. Kowane irin ɓangare ana sarrafa sihiri domin ya zama ya yi tasiri akan abin da ake bukata. Akwai rufa ido, akwai dabo, duk waɗannan abubuwa wa'ansu al'amura ne na ilimi na shikimomi wanda in baka yi imani ba sai ka ce a'a wannan matsafi ne, sai ka riki mutum shekara 1000 kana cewa ai uban wani matsafi ne ko kakan wani matsafi ne, ko kuma ba su iya komai ba sai tsafi, kuma ba ma layin tsafin ba ne. In ka turke shi ya gaya maka yanda ake yi, to kila ranar kiyama in Allah ya tahe ku da kai da shi sai a ga waye matsafi, domin shi ba layin mamayi ba. To wannan dole ne al'umma su fahimtu, kamar sarkin aska mun to da shi domin ya dan jarba mana wa'ansu al'amura wanda ake kira sihiri. Zai gwadanta mana waɗansu abubuwan da za su bayyana su ga cewar to daga nan sai mu ga wannan sihiri ne ko tsafi ne, sai mu ajiye shi kuma a gurbinsa. Salamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Wakilin sarkin aska gare ka, za mu so mu ji ta bakinka game da sihiri da kuma irin tsarabar da ka riko mana a matsayin abin da za ka gwada mana mu gani, don waɗanda ke tasowa waɗanda ba su da labarin shi ko kuma suna ɗaukar shi a matsayin jita-jita, yau su gane wa idansu a dalilin albarkacin taron Hibaf na shekarar 2025. Bismillah.
Yan uwa ɗalibai, yan uwa na, salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatu. Kamar yadda mai magana ya gabata, Mala Ado Sarkin Bori na Fanisau, tabbas tsafi daban kuma sihiri daban, wanda kusan a gari dukkanin wani abu da za a yi shi wanda ya saba wa tunani ko hankali, musamman a cikin society na malam Bahaushe, sai ka ji an ce tsafi ne, wanda muna ganin abubuwa da yawa bature zai yi su, hatta wireless. Yanzu ga speaker ina amfani da ita, wireless ce, technology ne na zamani, amma ka yadda da shi cewar bature zai iya yi, amma kai ka ajiye naka kuma ka ɗauki nasa. Yanzu ga abin da nake magana da shi, amma ga speakun da suke displayin ɗin abin da nake faɗi a gefe da gefe ba tare da waya ce aka ja ba, wanda dukkaninmu nan ba ma kokonto akan cewar wannan bature ne ya yi. Kuma da za ta samu matsala, ƙoƙarinmu da tunaninmu ya za mu gyara yanda za ta dinga yi, ta ci gaba da yi a matsayin wireless. Sai in ta gagara ne kuma malam Bahaushe sai abin da ake cewa construction, ya sake haɗa nasa, sai a jona wayar kuma ya zama na ya tafi. To a gaskiyar magana, kamar yadda Baba Ado ya faɗa, akwai abubuwa da yawa da ake mana hukunce-hukunce da su, sannan kowace sana'a ko kuma kowane ɓangare. Yanzu misali da Allah, na san dai lokaci ya yi, kamar tibi, yaren tibi da ake cewa idan an mutu gawa na kai kan tarami, wannan akwai abin mamaki a ciki. Mamakin ba kaɗan ba, mutum ya mutu kuma ya tashi. Mu a cikin Bahaushe, a cikin al'adarmu, ina muka taɓa ganin hakan, kuma hakan ba zai ta faru ba. Amma idan an so kuma ta faru, za ta faru, domin su ma sun yi amfani ne da me, da tsafi ta ɓangaren abin da ya shafi aljani. Wala Allah aljani ne ya tada wannan mamacin, to amma ya magana mana, amma ba zai magana ba, amma zai yi tafiya. idan aljanin ne ya zo ya rike shi kamar ya yi garkuwa da shi aljanin yana jikinsa ko gefe da gefe wani aljanin ya rike sai yi tafiya mana. Ko mu yanzu gawar tamu ta mutum da mutum sai rike gefe da gefe ko bai taka yana tafiya normal ba zai yi tafiya. To saboda haka a ɓangaren abin da ya shafi aljanu ko bori gaskiya ne, bori gaskiya ne, ba ƙarya a cikin bori, saboda bori da aljani ake bori, kuma aljani akwai shi ba babu ba. Ɓangarenmu na wanzamai muna da abubuwa na sihiri na surkulle da yawa, wanda kamar misali yanzu zan iya cewa zan tura wani gashi a ciki sai a yi mamaki ta yaya ni zan ci masa kuma in tura masa gashin a cikinsa, wanda a yanzu zan kwatanta kuma zan gwada, kuma ina neman wani ya fito nan wanda hakan zai faru.
ana neman dama a faɗaɗa ilimi da Allah a samu wani ya sadaukar ya zo a gwada. Na'am, Prof sa. Haka yake Prof. Na'am? To, wato kuma Prof na yarda da kai saboda ga hajiya kakanmu tana ta faɗi ɗazu cewa kada su sake lokacinsu ne damar su ce su yi amfani da ita. Haka. To, anan ba? To yanzu ya za mu yi da ilimin da ake ganin kamar akwai shi kamar babu shi? Ya za mu yi da ilimin da ake ganin kamar akwai shi kamar babu shi? To, shi kenan magana ta ƙare ai. Ga gashi ga kwai. To, okay. Bismillah. Ana gani? Mustapha. Cameraman, adjust. To, kuna gani dai ko? Ga kwai an fito da shi, ga kuma gashi shi ya ɗauka da kanshi, ya kuma cinye abin shi. To, za mu ga yadda kimiyyar Hausawa za ta mai da gashin nan da aka ce koma cikin kwai. Na, a taka shi? Cameraman matso kusa. Zo gani matso kusa. Ka gan shi? Ka gan shi? To irin wannan
a gurguje muna kan dai abin da ya shafi sihiri, ina neman mutum hudu karfafa wanda suka yadda da karfinsu su fito min nan gurin.
Wato irin wannan fasaha ana iya tura ma gashin nan a ciki yanzu. Yawwa. Wannan haka yake. Yawa, ku juya ku kalli masu kallo. To ai sun bari an wuce wurin. Ai da an tura miki gashin. Wani ya bi ba wani? Kai shiga gaba. Irin kamar yadda yara ke wasa yawa. Dawo bayan shi. Ƙarin mutum guda. Ana neman ƙarin mutum guda. To kai to zirin sarkin aska me ake sa rai yanzu? To.
Waɗannan mutanen da suka zauna a nan, kamar yadda babe maganar sihiri, to yanzu za mu gwada sihiri mu tabbatar da sihiri a nan gurin. A cikinsu, idan sun tashi waya ta ƙarama ce dai ba wata babba ba, amma idan sun miƙe tsaye.
Ina jin za su kyauta waya yau kuwa.
Idan sun miƙe tsaye na ba su wannan waya.
Yawwa. A'a, miƙe ƙafa ka a ƙasa, miƙe ƙafa ka. Kakka miƙe ƙafa ka. To, bismillah ku. To, yaya? Malam Umar, A'a, to, a kwance su ko a kyale su? A kyale su? Kuna son su kuwa? To, ai ba dai igiya muka sa masu ba, kuna da kallo ga suna. To, shi kenan, kwance su. Kada wanda ya tashi. Ga makirfon.
Kada ku tashi. Bismillah, kowa ya cika. Kowa ya cika kan na ɗauke hannuna, kowa ya cika. Cika kai ma na gaba. To, abu ɗaya zuwa biyu ya rage. A cikinsu yanzu, akwai wanda za mu kwashe marenansa. Sai mu ajiye. Listen.
Hello, a saurara. Wato, kamar yadda taken taron yake rumbun ilimi, gashi muna ta ganin dalla-dalla yadda ilimin ke gudana daga wannan mataki zuwa wannan mataki ta fuskar.
Jama'a wannan menene a hannuna? Wannan akwati ne, akwai wanda ya ga wani abu a cikinsa? Kun tabbata babu? Kowa ya sa idonsa.
Ta, wato, ya isa. Wato, na so in faɗi muku abin da wani malamin mai faɗi. Wato, shi ilimin nan gaskiya ne. Wato idan an kula akwai sunan Allah a jikin abin nan. Ba zan manta ba, muna aji cikin darasi. Farfesa Bunza yake cewa an yi sata a lardin Sokoto. Satan nan da aka yi kudin haraji ne. Kudin harajin nan kuma na silalla ne. Su kuma silallan nan a cikin akwati ake sa su, kuma an ittifakan karfin tuwo dai bai ɗauka shi mutum guda. Amma an yi ittifakan ya ce a zamanin nan ana kyauta san sai dai wani mutumi da ake ce ma juraha sai in shi ya ɗauke su. Kuma ana son kuɗin nan dole a lallaba shi a samu a dawo da su. Kuma gashi an yi ittifakin ba a iya ɗaukan akwatin kuɗin harajin nan mutum guda. Me zai faru zuwa aka lallaba shi aka ce dan Allah ana sa ran kaya kaza sun ɓace, da Allah a taimaka in an ga gilmin su, da Allah a taimaka a dawo da su. Sai ce ba komi za a duba. Ana nan sai ga shi tafe niki-niki da kayan akwatin shi aka. Yana zuwa ya ko sauke. Kuma ittifakan akwatin nan bai iya ɗaukuwa mutum guda. To sai suka yi mishi abin da ake ma barayin mashin na wannan lokacin. Da Allah wane ya aka kasace wannan mashin. Yana buga mashi haka zaka ji kakat ya bude duk security da ka sa mashi. abin da ya mishi shine kawai yana dafa ya ce bismillah, to ya ce daga sanda aka yi bismillah ya dafa akwati da shi da akwati har zuwa yau da ya ce ba a san inda suke ba, kuma ana wannan magana cewa tun colonial masters ne. Ya bace akwatin da aka tara haraji ya bace, kuma cewa yi bismillah ya dafa shi. Na haka akwai sihiri, sihirin na yana iya kasancewa na gargajiya ne, sihirin na yana iya kasancewa na zamani ne, yana tattare da tasiri na addini da ya zo ma Hausawa. Don haka akwai ilimi na sihiri, akwai ilimi na tsafi, akwai sihiri na surkulle, akwai sihiri na siddabaru, akwai sihiri na rufa'ido, akwai sihiri na dabo, suna nan kashi-kashi, amma tsafi daban, sauran bangarori daban. Yana da kyau a gane, kuma ilimi ne, kuma sai an bi sannan ake samun shi. Wanda ke neman ƙarin bayani sai nemi wazirin sarkin aska a Kano ko Malam Ado, wanda yake masani ne a harkar iskoki kuma yana ma'amala da iskoki. Muna godiya ga gidauniya da kuma duk waɗanda suke da ruwa da tsaki a shirya taron Hibaf, saboda wannan wani ɓangare ne na kaɗan daga cikin abin da a can a cikin jami'a mukan kwatanta, saboda cikin jami'a ne shi yasa ba a zurfafawa ba a faɗaɗawa, amma a wuri irin wannan tunda an zo wajen jami'a ana iya sakin linzami yadda ya kamata, saboda a can ɗalibai ne ƙarƙashin ikon shugaban makaranta yake. Duk abin da ya faru waɗanda aka gayyato suka yi wasa ba su za a riƙe ba, shugaban makaranta za a riƙe. Nan ko budewa aka yi ce za a yi rijista, in ka ji kana so za ka zo za ka nemi ilimi, kai ka yi rijista ka zo, ba irin wacce rijista ta cikin makaranta ba. To muna godiya da gidauniyar da duk ta kama aka yi taron Hibaf, ta faɗakar, ta wayar da kai, ta ilmantar, aka tabbatar ilimin Hausawa akwai shi, yana nan, yana kuma ci gaba da gudanuwa har yau har gobe ga waɗanda Allah ya ba iko. Mun gode. Akwai ƙarin bayani za a ji gashi.
Inda dai kawai kasancewar ba mu samu damar da za mu yi abubuwa da yawa ba, din da mun tanado su saboda yanayin lokaci ana ta nuna mana time, amma Allah ya da a wani karo ko wani taro makamancin irin waɗannan ɗin, insha Allah za a ga abubuwan da duk kuma ya kamata saɓanin waɗannan ci gaba da wasu insha Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, muna godiya. Malado bismillah, za a yi hoto. Assalamu alaikum. Mun bu a yi haƙuri, za mu bayar da dama a yi tambaya domin a amsa. Masu tambayoyi, za mu ɗauki uku daga nan a takaice. Mu fara da Hajiya, sai Dr. Duko, sai Malam gashi nan a baya a daga nan ɓangaren. Bismillah Hajiya.
To, salamu alaikum. Sunana Balaraba Ramatu Yakubu. Ni ba tambaya ce da ni ba, ƙarin bayani ne.
To.
Yanda aka ɗora sandan nan akan ƙarfafa maza har guda 4.
Haka.
A da iyayenmu da kakanninmu irin wannan ne yake kai su gurin masu sihiri.
Haka.
Saboda ko sarki ne ko mai kuɗi ne ko waye, in dai ta yi sa'a aka ɗora masa sandan aka to ba zai tashi ba.
Haka.
Sai da abin da ta ce shi zai yi.
Haka.
Wannan dalilin shi ya sa iyayenmu suka yi na'am da boka, kuma wasu suke tabawa da malam.
Haka.
Amma yau gashi an nuna wa 'yan bana bakwai
cewar
ga yanda ake yi wa maza ko mun karfinsu, kuma an yi.
To, wato ni abin da ya burge ni shine ba karkatar da tambayar a bangaren cewa ga yadda ake sarrafa mazan bane. A'a, yadda ake cewa akwai ilimin abin ana aiki da shi kuma yana yi. Saboda zan so a ce mun ba ku dama ku je ku tambaye su. Wani fannin ilimin wanda ba ambata ba nan shine ku tambaye mutum 4 na akwai wanda muka tattauna da shi zaka kama mana mai kaza ya ba ku labari ba ai kore ciki. Dr. Duko bismillah.
Yawa, na gode Dr. Lamuna.
Yawa. To.
Okay, abinda zan ce shine wani comment ne da wani ya taɓa yi ya ce matsafa na Afirka maimakon tun kafin kiristanci ya zo da musulunci ya zo
haka
si sauri su gina Afirka he suka yi ta rigima in za a yi suna gidan wannan he su sa a yi ruwa
haka
in za a yi bikin gidan wannan he su sa a yi ruwa
haka
yanzu ko da pyramid suka a kufe na ai ko da ita mun tsaya mu dan samu wani abu
sosai kuwa
to amma idin try
to
kasa irin mu yanzu da izala ta zo ka gane dole mu submitin saboda ta fi zama tabbas
wannan
akan wayanci abubuwan
haka
nagode
kwarai Allah ya saka da alkhairi sai mutum na uku
yawa assalamu alaikum
wa alaikum salam
da farko ina son tambaya wannan al'adar da aka samar zan iya sha
sosai kuwa sai in baka so
tambaya ta biyu shine ban sani ba ta fuskar ku da waɗannan ilman da muke da su da daddu ga abubuwa da yawa suna faruwa a cikin ƙasa na rashin tsaro da sauransu
haka
shin kun yi wani yunkuri ko wani aiki akan irin waɗannan abubuwan misali don ku ba da taku gudunmuwar nagode
to amsa da zan baka a ɓangare na ta fuskar nazarce-nazarce akan al'adun maguzawa jiya da yau gaskiya ina da tabbacin akwai wuraren da su dai ba sa tsintuwa kuma ba sa yarwa a tsinta shine tarbiyyar gidan kuma wannan tarbiyya ta uwa gona ce in kana ji ana uwa gona ana cewa in suka yarda abu ba a ɗauka in suka gani anyar ba sa ɗauka dalili shine a wurinta ita wannan iskar idan kayar wani ya ɗauka kawai tana tunanin shi wanda ya ɗauka ya saci kayanka ne da aka hukunta shi kawai za ta yi idan kai ka gani a ƙasa ka ɗauka abinda za ta ɗauka kai ɗin da kake da ita sata kai shi yasa masu wannan nau'in kasan hidima ce ta aljani to aljani iri-iri ne to ita uwar gona iri-iri ce masu irin wannan uwar gona a yanzu gaskiya su raƙir su bace ka san dalili ba sani ba sabo kai da kake da ita ba za ta taɓa ragama ba bari baka misali na haɗu da wanda a maraba kankara ya ce ai da aka yi mishi sata ya ce kaga yanzu nan cikin wadda muke ko to shikenan wannan roba dai a nan stage take an sace ta da aka tashi aka dawo da ita cikin hall can inda jama'a ke zama da aka as if ba a dawo da ita ba da aka hukuncin ongonan nan stand kisa ne kuma ta kashe ba a dawo da shi ba nan aka ɗauke shi a stage aka shigo da shi baki-baki aka aje ita kuma a tunaninta ai ba a dawo da shi inda yake ba to don haka akwai wadda kuma shine zaka ji an ce ma ai tana kama ɓarawo idan ya saci kayan masu ita sai ta fara kumbura kafafun sai ta kumbura ciki sai ta kumbura kai to da zarar an wuce matakin ciki shikenan sai fashewa sai mutuwa to dalili kenan shi ma ka gane bahaushe da ilimi yake ai cewa ake sai a zo a yanka dan zakaran aka ce to wance ga kayan ki nan ki bi mana sawu to da an yi wannan shi kuma barawo in yana da ilimin cewa ai ya san kayan masu uwa gona ya sata ya san cewa sawu za ta bi ko to shikenan ka san masussuka to shikenan sai ya bi ta ya bi nan ya bi nan ya bi nan ya taka ta gidanku kenan sai ya je musu suka gidan su ne taka ai sawu za ta ko to ita kuma sai ta bi sawun wannan soshiyar ko buntun ɗaya bayan ɗaya a nan ko an sussuka gero buhu 7 can buhu 8 yaushe ta gama bin duk kwanson gero guda ɗaya ta bi shi ma a cikin ilimin bahaushe kenan shi da ya sata da ilimi ya yi ta saboda sai ya tattake masussuka iri-iri saboda ya san ai ina shekara nawa za ta ɗauka kanta isko shi ina fata ka gane shi ma wani ai ilimi ne to in kuma ba haka nan ba to dole in suka yi sanarwa ba waccan ta farko wannan ta biyu ba to dole a maido da abin da aka sata dole kuma a kawo kayan baye in aka ce baye kayan ta hidima da wannan farar holama zakaru kara kaza a ce ma farar shirwa ko jar shirwa ko kyari-kyari ko fingi da sauransu yi mata hidima ta abin da ake ce ma bikin kwakwabe idan aka yi kwakwabe a ba ta haƙuri a ce wane ne ya kaza to amma ga kayan nan ya dawo da su ke kuma ga abin da ke so na an miki da Allah a yi haƙuri a kyale shi to akwai irin waɗannan al'amura don haka inda maguzawa suke kamar yadda malam ya yi bayani ɗazu ya ce ita ana samun aminci ne tsakanin iska da mamallakin iska. To sai dai a yanzu abin da ya sa tsafi ke jan baya ga koyarwa da ilimi da da'awa, wato ba a iya yin hidima ta hakika irin wadda iyaye da kakanni ke ma iska hidima. Ita kuma kana mata hidima iska daidai da daidai, wallahi yanzu nan kamar yadda ake cewa an yi a Kano, wallahi tallahi ni ina da yakinin tabbas an so a kwashe ku daga nan zuwa waje ana kwashe ku, sai dai ku gan ku waje. To matsalar da aka samu yanzu ita kanta iskar ka kula ba a mata hidimar da ya kamata, ba imani, ba a yadda da ita ba a wasu lamuran, kuma irin hidimar da take so din a bata jaririn ko a bata mutum ko a bada kaza ba a iya yin shi yadda ya kamata, shi yasa kuma ba a iya ganin abin da ya kamata. Bari ba ka dan misali, so nawa ake rigima. Bari ba ka dan misali daga cikin dalilan da yasa na ba na son harkar union ni in person student union, wato asagafurla na ga abin da ya bai firgita na dan Fodio University. Ana neman wani esco, wallahi duk fitina ka sai daga ce wallahi ga gambo can iyaka kake nan, wallahi kai daga ce wallahi ga gambo, wallahi kuma mun tabbatar. Sai daga ce ga gambo wallahi iyaka ka da shi kenan na kasa yayi ya cinye kuɗi ne, iyaka ka ce ga gambo mu mun sa abin da yayi. Akwai wani bagobiri na tsallaka na je siyasar faculty of education a Nuesa. Bagobirin nan shi dai level 4 yake, shi kuma ni wanda na bi wani yayana shi kuma shi abin da yake so shi treasurer zai yi, kuma sun yi. Amma shi bagobirin nan wallahi tallahi ba zan mai sharri ba, cewa shi kilik din nan da ya hada na esco da ya ji kunya su gare ya ji kunyar lahira, wallahi ba zan mai sharri ba. Kuma wallahi cikin mutum 7 yana mutum 1 ne haɗi, kuma mun san abin da aka yi. Kuma tabbas ni ga nauni aka ce ma to ka tsaya ma wani ma da suka contestin treasurer da wani zo gani, Allah sa an ga annabi da na gan shi a haka yake tafiya, saboda mun san abin da aka doka mashi. To ilimin akwai shi, ana kuma amfani da shi, ana kuma yin shi. To amma in aka saki yanayin yadda kamar kai ne yanzu ka sayi sabon mashin baka service baka kula da shi, ai dole sauri ya lalace. To iskokin ne na yanzu ba a kula da su, amma duk inda kake ka iska yan gargajiya masu maguzanci da kuma masu hidima da iskoki yan bori da sauransu, ana hidima yadda ya kamata za ka iske a waje kayan su ke kwana, wallahi ko tabo ma ba su yi. Wannan shi ne amsa tambayar ka. Sai nan bangaren ana neman mutum 3 ko? To bismillah ga wani can a baya.
Za mu iya yi a gurguje da Allah?
Da gudu in Allah da cikin minti 3. To bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, sunana Fatima Sai Jafaru.
To
tambayan da nake so in yi akan wa'ina abin alluran da ya sa a harshen shi da fuskan shi, shin su dabara ne ko tsafi ne, shine nake so ya fayyace mana.
Ta wannan tambaya ce mai muhimmanci, kuma kusan a tarurruka da yawa mutane akan samu wasu suna irin wannan tambayar. Sannan tambayar da kika yi akwai masu irin ta da yawa a ciki, amma wani ya yi nauyin bakin yayin ya yadda ya sake tafiya a cikin duhun abin. Kin fahimce ni? Kamar yadda kike magana ko ke yanzu idan za ki zo kowace ɗaya akwai addu'ar da ake tofa, wacce wannan ba sai na gaya miki ba, sirri na ce. Amma in kika bi kamar yadda malam ɗazi ya tambayi, wani abun bi ake, idan kika bi sai na koya miki yadda gobe ke ma ba ki gaji wanzanci ba, amma idan kin so ki firgita wani guri ke ma sai dai a ganki kin canje yanayi. Kin fahimce ni? Wannan shi ne.
Je mai tambaya ta biyu.
To suna Shehu Sani.
To
tambaya ta nan ita ce kamar yadda aka yi bayani tsafi da sauran abin da ya shafi al'adan Bahaushe.
Haka.
Shin irin wannan abubuwan da yakan zo a gargajiyance kuma yana juyawa ne da tasirin zamani ko kuma da cuɗanya da baƙi, misali addini. Misali idan muka ɗauki surkulle, za ga a cikin surkulle akwai surkullen da ba shi da surki da addini kuma yana amfani. Misali akwai surkullen da iyayen mu tsofaffi suke yi, misali inda su tafiya kaman ba duhu sukan ce bakan bakatar dilim ya dilima dilim. Kaga wannan ba shi da wani alama ko surki da addini. sannan kuma akwai kuma a surkulle wanda za ga yana da surki da addini har akan hada da ayoyin Qur'ani. Misali akwai daurin baki za ga ana karanta bismillahi kub ba tara kub baki kub. To kaga wannan duka wasu abubuwa ne da yake da surki kuma da ayoyin Qur'ani amma dukan surkulle ne. Sannan idan muka kalli bori yarjejeniya ne tsakanin dan adam da kuma iska domin kila a ba mare lafiya in har ba za su fita ba to a yi yarjejeniya a bar shi ya zauna lafiya ana bar shi ko da magani ya rinka barawa su kuma su faɗa abin da suke bukata a basu to kaga wannan ba shi da tasiri ba shi da surki da addini sai kuma daga baya zamani ya zo wanda yake da surki da addini sai muka samu ruqiya bambancin ta da ita borin nan jan ayoyi da wasu addu'o'i amma duk kusan tafiyan ɗaya ne.
Wato amsa ka anan shine akwai yanayin da ake samu yanzu zamani ya zo ana haɗaka tsakanin tsafi na gargajiya da kuma tasirin addinin musulunci. Bari in baka misali, akwai kalar tsafin da za a yi yanzu wala abin da za a ce kawai a samo maniyin mace da namiji wanda dole sai an samu kwanciya aure kuma koda ko ya bushe a kankaro shi a zo da shi ana zuwa da shi kila za a hada shi da jini ko da wani abu to da shi za a hada a kwaba a dangwala a yi rubutun kuma surori da ayoyi za a rubuta kaga nan haɗaka gargajiya ne da addinin musulunci don haka da zarar ka ji an gama wannan kawai duka ɗauka saboda tsafi gaskiya mai shi ne saboda abin da aka ya wuce wuri ana samun irin wannan ko kuma a samu a ce ai sai ka tsaga jikinka ko wuri kaza sannan za ka kawo a hada da sura kaza ko aya kaza ko kuma da jinin shi ne za a yi rubutu don haka ana samun haɗaka addinin islama da kuma gargajiya. Mutum na ƙarshe.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sunana Aliyu Muhammad. Ni tabbaya ta ina so bambancin wa'annan kalmomin ne. Bambancin rufa'ido da sihiri da surkulle da tsafi da
siddabaru. Surutu tsafi ka yi ma iska hidima ta biya maka bukata sanda kake so a inda kake so shine tsafi. Siddabaru yana nufin a yi surutu haɗe da dubaru wani abu na al'ajabi ya faru wanda ya wuce hankalin tuwo. Surkulle kuma shine a yi surutun da ake kukkulla shi zaka ji cewa bai da ma'ana amma sanda ake yin wannan surutun wanda kai baka san ma'anar shi ba sannan wani abin al'ajabi yake faruwa. Rufa'ido ko wani abu ne za a zo a yi shi yanzu nan kai a idonka cewa mutum ne ya koma nan daga baya ya shiga ta duburar doki ya fito ta bakinsa kai haka kake gani amma shi ko ya san ta karkashin shi ya shiga ya kurɗo wurin bakin da haka idan ka bai iya ganin wannan abin shi yasa za ka jana ce kai ai magani ke bayarwa yanzu ai ka san iskoki sun buɗe mai ido to kai naka idan ne ake rufewa a sa labule kotun yanzu sanda za a yi wannan bayani sai dai ka ji mu muna bayani nan kai kuma ba ka ganin mu. Assalamu alaikum.
Ina mai hoto da Allah taɓa musu. Ina ga mun zo ƙarshen tattaunawa na yau sai kuma rufewa da za mu yi amma kafin mu rufe masu kiɗa sun fara setting up. We'll still be returning for the closing ceremony where we'll have poetry performances, music as well as a dance performance. So a ci gaba da biyo mu za mu dawo karfe 7:20 nan da minti 20 so wanda zai ci abinci masu cin abinci a je a ci abinci a dan miƙe kafa mu dawo karfe 7:20 ku taba makan ku kuma da Allah mun gode. Thank you so much.